Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of the ReFounded Project podcast. My name is Zach Paula, and today I had the distinct honor and privilege of talking to Clark Impastato. Clark served in the Navy as a Navy SEAL and the Army at 19 Special Forces Group. He was a military contractor for Dynacorp and an undercover narcotics officer for Phoenix Police Department. He has a wealth of experience, and it was truly unique to hear his perspective on current events and his background. I really hope you liked today's episode. If you can, please hit the like and subscribe button. That will help me out. And without further ado, here's Clark Impastato. Clark, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, brother? Can you hear me good?
I hear you. Do you hear me okay?
I do, yeah. Yep.
I have headphones, but every time I plug them into this Zoom thing, my voice changes weird. It gets all, the audio messes up. So I always check and make sure that my audio is okay on your end. You can hear me?
Yeah, I hear you good. Yeah.
Sweet, dude. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good. Yourself?
Yeah, doing well. I see you started Jiu Jitsu.
Yeah, I did. You know, I've had buddies that have done it for years, and I was just always like, I'm into guns, and my situation's changed. So yeah, getting into it. Late to the party, but it's fun.
Can you carry in California?
You can, but it's such a pain in the butt. They make it really difficult.
Yeah.
You got to take an 8-hour class, and then every year afterwards, I think it's a 4-hour class. But the rub is it depends what county you live in. You got to go to the sheriff and apply, and every county is different. Now, it's a statewide thing. And I do live in a cool county where the sheriff is cool and we'll hand them out, but it's too expensive. And you submit your paperwork with the proof you've done the 8-hour class, and then it takes like 6 months to get the appointment. And then
it amazes me that so many guys like you live in California still. I know. Well, not down here in Texas, man.
We still carry. We just don't have the permission slip.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. That's one way of doing it.
I think it's just a misdemeanor anyway if you get caught. And I don't think any cop would. If I'm out shopping with my wife and daughter, and for whatever reason, I think the cop would be whatever.
You would hope so. I don't know. You never know.
You don't know. You could get. Yeah, I mean, you could put yourself in a scenario, but I'm pretty sure from what I've read, it's just a misdemeanor, and I just
the Texas House just passed constitutional carry.
I saw that. That's awesome.
That's crazy. That's
going to change. I was a cop in Arizona when they passed the law that you don't need a permit to carry concealed, and I thought that was awesome. You know,
I mean,
problem with it.
The people who aren't going to do anything wrong, you know what I mean? Like, might as well let them carry. Cool, man. Well, I'm going to start out each podcast with 5 random questions just to get us kind of in the zone, and then we'll talk about your background.
Perfect.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve? Bullies. People that treat other people like shit.
Yeah. That's
sure.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's good. If you were a wrestler, what would your walkout music be? What song?
Oh, Metallica 1 for sure.
1, okay, yeah, that's right there.
My character would be the Frogman.
Yeah. Favorite cartoon growing up?
Favorite cartoon growing up? Oh man, probably He-Man.
Hey-Man, see, I never watched that.
He-Man was good. Yeah, Transformers was good. Yeah,
Transformers was good shit, dude. They need to bring that back.
Yeah.
All right, favorite place to vacation?
Thailand.
All right. Single or married?
Both.
Okay. Very nice. And then there's a question. This is what I'm going to ask every single person, because it's kind of what the podcast is going to be about. What does honor mean to you?
Honor to me means committing to something and then follow through with it. I think it takes a lot of honor to commit to. It could be a relationship. It could be a cause. You know, obviously I have uniform service in my past. So I like that. To me, the honor was the commitment to it, but then to actually stick with it, do the best of your ability.
Yeah.
To me, that's just kind of what honor means.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I love hearing different people. I had Greg Hakey on last time, and he had a great answer, and it's good to hear everyone's perspective, because honor's big with me. Obviously, Gary Welt, I try to honor him, every single day. Yeah. But I'm here. Well, I can.
That's a commitment. Exactly. The commitment you have to him. And that's absolutely.
Absolutely. So I was going to also ask you, is there someone that you've lost that you can talk about that you try to honor on a daily basis? Maybe talk about how you honor them, how you try to keep their legacy alive.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people. The biggest name that I try to keep alive is John Branchizio. He was killed while we were serving in Israel together in 2003, October 15th. Was hit by a roadside bomb as his motorcade was driving around Gaza. And that was the first time operationally I had lost anyone on my team. And so that one hit harder than every other dead buddy I have just kind of died serving somewhere else somehow, whatever.
Right.
But Cheese, as I called him, was a teammate of mine, and I was in country when it happened and part of the QRF efforts and all that. And so that one really hit close to home. First time I sent boxes home. So yeah, I really try to keep Cheese alive and also for the longest time, I don't know why, the Navy SEAL Foundation made a video of all the SEALs that have died since 9/11 to include contractors, but somehow they always had forgotten Cheese. And I don't know how that fell through the cracks, but I made enough noise and I got enough brothers involved that he's now included in that
that's
memorial
good.
video, which was just really amazing to me.
There's been a few guys that have gotten left out of, for whatever reason, there's just unfortunately so many that.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the hard part. I actually started getting the initials of dead brothers tattooed on my rib cage after 9/11. And I tell you, just a year into it, I just stopped because it was just like, holy shit. Like, it really hit home how many people were losing overseas in these efforts. And so it started out a good, noble idea. And I thought, hey, it's a good way to kind of honor them. But there was just so many. In fact, this bar we were at, not to jump ahead, but we used to put pictures of our fallen brothers. And it was a little bar in Thailand when I left in 2007. It was a whole wall just filled with pictures. It was just like overwhelming to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I've had the honor of drinking at Danny's.
Oh,
and I mean, it's like hollow ground. Like, you can feel it when you walk in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Danny's is a good place. Yeah.
Do you have do you feel like an obligation to make the most of your days for the teammates that are no longer here? Or do you put not any pressure on yourself, but somewhat of a burden on yourself to make the most of your days because they no longer can?
I do. And I used to go about it the wrong way. I think all of us did in the beginning. We used to just get hammered for the fallen. That's just kind of a tradition and a custom, especially on anniversaries of and stuff. And myself and several of my buddies quickly broke away from that because we figured out that's not really a way to honor them. It's just to become booze hounds. I think the way to honor them is to do the things they can no longer do, which is to be productive with our families, to stay in the gym, to keep our mental health nice and dialed in and all that stuff. And so I realized that I'm not honoring them by just getting hammered on anniversaries, that I'm honoring them for, in fact, I had a SEAL buddy that died fairly recently. And so I just strapped zip tied an American flag to a stick and ran through the neighborhood and had cars honking and waving. And that's even here in California, I was like, I didn't know if I was going to get eggs thrown at me or what, but that, I thought that's how you honor a dude. I knew Seth was super happy about that, as opposed to me just crushing a bottle of vodka and crying. Yeah. Now I'm running through the neighborhood with a flag in his honor. And so I've really learned what you just said is to do it positive. And to me, it's not pressure. It's like, now I know they're smiling down and they're happy, as opposed to, like us just getting hammered doing stupid stuff, It's,
and I think if they can motivate you to be successful in whatever it is you're doing. I mean, I had the honor of knowing Seth, and that one was, even I didn't know him as well as I would have liked, but even that one was hard to put words to because it was just
was tough, so random and out of the blue. Like, it wasn't what you would expect. That was a tough one, but that's how I said, all the dumb stuff I've done to honor these fallen dudes, most of it's just been self-destruction. This one, I just want to do it right. And I learned that a few years back. So for different anniversaries, typically it'll be a run, or sometimes it's not even that eventful. I might just go somewhere quiet and just kind of think about them. Just go to a park and chill. It looks like I'm just hanging out, but I'm thinking of, I realized to put it in terms of, I didn't lose a brother. I was lucky enough to be their brother, that I shared some memories with them. And as you know, these guys are amazing people. They're all such handcrafted characters. Yeah. Usually the best examples of what a human should be.
Exactly what I was going to say is like, there are other people to look to, but there's no one like these guys, and like Gary, having ALS and watching him, I mean, never complain in front of me. I mean, just the examples they set. And I mean, I think about them every single day, and that's might be a segue into another topic too. Have you found yourself kind of getting away from alcohol? Because as people reminisce and they get in their feelings and they drink, we have this problem with veteran suicide and first responder suicide. And have you found yourself maybe not drinking as much, or what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's
me personally, I don't drink at all anymore. Yeah. A big part of that was my daughter came to live with me from Thailand.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, I've always, when there's kids been around, I've been focused on that.
Yeah.
I've been able to compartmentalize it, but I just decided in my life, I'm done with it. I dance with that devil plenty. It starts out social and fun in the military and the teams and all that. There's a camaraderie piece to it. But when you're no longer in the teams and you're a veteran, you start to kind of isolate yourself, become antisocial. You don't want to go out anymore. So you sit at home and drink. You look at the forbidden laptop, you look at pictures of yesteryear, you look at pictures of dead buddies, and it becomes this emotional roller coaster. I would be willing to bet that probably 90% or more of the suicides that there's alcohol on board.
Absolutely.
I would be willing to bet that's one of the, I don't know, I'm guessing at the percent, but it's a high number for sure. And I encourage a lot of my buddies, we all do it. We've all done it, but you have to somehow there's a light at the end of that tunnel. And I promise you, whatever you're going through is much better to deal with sober, because with alcohol, it just magnifies whatever it is you're going through.
The healthier coping mechanisms is huge. And seeing guys, it seems like the guys who do well when they transition are guys that don't hit the bottle hard, because they're drinking like probably what I drink on the weekends. And then there's team guy drinking.
Oh yeah.
And if you do that when you're not, if you continue to do that when you're not in that environment, it can't be good for your mental health or your physical health.
Well, no, it's tricky too, because when you're in the teams, it's very isolated because you're busy training, you're busy deploying. There are times on platoon training trips, at the end of it or whatever, you'll break out some beers and stuff. Obviously, going in country, the Navy's pretty good about dropping you off somewhere fun like Thailand or Australia for a few days, and then also on the way back out to decompress. So there's a time and a place for it, but you're always with your teammates. It's usually, there's kind of a reason for it. But when you're by yourself as a veteran, you continue those habits and it completely becomes self-destructive. I have found personally, and a lot of my buddies for sure, staying up in the gym, staying fit, staying running, cleaning up your diet, because it's really easy to get sucked into the negative world of heavy amounts of alcohol. And plus, the older you get, you just can't drink like you're 25 anymore. I'm 47,
Yeah. And that's not even just for people who are veterans. That's for everybody. It's everybody. I mean, there's people who they get into these, I know I have friends who they get into these pyramid schemes where it's like this one supplement's going to change my life. And I'm like, you drink 6 beers a night. Like, that supplement's not going to do shit for you, unfortunately.
Yeah. I took my one a day. I'm good. It's like, I don't think it works that way. Exactly. I would rather be addicted to I'd rather have an exercise problem.
That's probably.
And that's how I've done is, as I know for me, a lot of people and military veterans, especially special operations guys, the busier you are, the more productive you're going to be, because we're going to start to self-destruct if there's too much sitting around. We don't like that. And I think people in general are kind of wired that way.
Absolutely.
So I was going to say something every day. I got to keep busy. It keeps me away.
I feel like I'm at my worst when I'm just sitting and not doing something. That's where I think everybody has those negative thoughts creep in, and
it does.
It becomes a pattern. And if you do it long enough, you stay in that funk, and you don't, it's getting harder and harder to get out of it.
Big time. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Yeah. I like that you talked about that. Is there anything you would want people to know about Cheese, about your friend that you could share, that just kind of what kind of person he was, or what you would want people to know about him?
He was just a big teddy bear, man. He was a East Coast guy, former dev group guy. So he's a Jedi. He's a guy that we all looked up to in country. And just a larger than life dude. Just a great dude. I think the characteristic that stands out the most is his leadership. He was just a good leader, very calm, very intelligent, but he was one of those guys that when he was around, you just kind of knew things were going to be okay. And I think that's why it shook me so hard, that he got taken out of all people. Like he seemed to always, it's kind of like maybe when a John Elway steps on the field or a Michael Jordan steps on the court, you're like, oh shit, dude's here. That's kind of the vibe he had.
Right.
But the way he carried himself was truly amazing. So I've always.
Do you try to emulate that?
Yeah, for sure. There was a lot of learning. The 2 years I spent in Israel really was a huge, huge learning curve. That was my transition from active duty to the contracting world.
Right.
And it was very quick paced. It was we showed up, we got our gear, and the next day we were driving around Gaza. Like it was like, holy shit.
Well, we'll definitely get into that. Can you tell me, where did you grow up?
Outside of Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Okay. Anything, what was your childhood like? What was your relationship with your parents like, siblings?
Yeah. My dad died when I was young, but I didn't know him. My parents got divorced when I was 1. So he was a biker dude, drunk, not really a very good person. So I thought that maybe I had kind of missed out growing up without him. But as an adult, when I learned what kind of person he was, I'm really grateful that my mom did what she did to protect me from him. And so I was raised with an older half brother, but just knew him as my brother. Didn't even really comprehend that he's a half brother until, again, I was older. So it was me and my brother and my mom. She was a great single mom. She really supported anything we wanted to do. I played soccer as a kid, but then middle school, I got really into hockey. Had always played pond hockey, but middle school is when I started to play organized hockey. So a little bit of a Happy Gilmore theme.
Right.
I wasn't the best skater, but I had a good slap shot. So
yeah. There's no ice hockey here in Texas, unfortunately.
No.
Did your mom wait until you were older to kind of tell you? I mean, when did you? Because I'm sure growing up when you were younger, you probably had that curiosity, right, about your dad. And
I did, especially when I started hanging out with other kids, and I'd go to their house, maybe spend the night or play, and I'd see that they had a dad, and like you just kind of know something's different, or I don't want to say not right, but just something was different.
Right.
But I also realized through a lot of my friends that some parents are just jerks, whether they're mom or dads. And so that I was at least lucky to have one super awesome parent being my mom. That maybe having a dad isn't always necessarily good, because some of my friends' dads, I'm like, God, he's a jerk. I'm glad he's not my dad. But then other dads were super awesome, working on the, muscle cars with their kids and stuff. So it never really bothered me. Probably early high school age is when I started to ask my mom just some random questions, and she would just tell me, honey, you're better off not knowing him. He just wasn't a nice person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I kind of kept it at that until I recently, maybe 2 years ago, came in contact through the internet with some other half brothers. Through him, half brothers to my oldest half brother I was raised with, half brothers through my mom, but I have 5 other half brothers through my dad that I never knew, but they knew me. They were all living together when I was brought home from the hospital. So they have memories of me being a little baby. So connecting through them, I really heard some bad stories about my dad, the specifics of it. And I really thought, wow, my mom was a rock star to completely
to get out of that.
Yeah. And
how old were you when you found out that you had these other half brothers? Because that's probably got to be a shock.
Yeah, no, I mean, I knew. My mom always told me that I had other half brothers on his side, but she didn't have anything to do with that family. She didn't know where they were. She said that I was free to research them, find them, whatever. She never tried to prevent me from connecting with that part of the family. But when I was 13, I realized I don't know anyone from that side of the family. I don't want to carry their last name anymore. So actually, my last name, Impastato, is my mom's birth last name.
Okay.
Everyone I know in my life is an Impastato, so I'd rather carry on that family name than the other family name. I don't even know any of them, and from what I do know, it's not really that great. So she asked the family, it's a traditional Italian family, and they said, yeah, man, let the kid change his name. So
There you go.
I got it. It's not a witness protection thing. I changed my name just for other reasons.
Did that have any part in why you joined the Navy, became a SEAL?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things that's funny about that. I used to think, and it is a part of the reason, my mom is very pro-military. She was a kid during World War II, but obviously America was very patriotic then, especially post-war. Everyone came home. It was great.
I wish it was still like that.
I know. We had it for a little while. There was a little bit of coming together after 9/11, and then quickly the flags disappeared. But there's still a lot of good patriotic Americans out there, like yourself. I mean,
it's the loud reminder that, right? The quiet majority for sure.
Yeah. And I have to remind myself of that, because you see the other side making all kinds of noise, but I do know that there's still millions and millions of really good Americans. Right. But for me, luckily, my mom was one of them, and she loved World War II movies. And so we would kind of bond by watching those together. And I really thought World War II was just cool. The cause, Pacific theater, European theater. So it really caught my interest. But then also as a kid in the 80s, all the Rambo movies and Commando movies. And it was like, dude, how do you not want to be one of these badass soldier dudes? Gulf War kicks off. Holy shit, I definitely want to do this. I'm in high school. I found my purpose. I don't know what else I want to do. So that's what got me into it. But backtracking to where I reconnected to my other half brothers from my dad's side, every one of them served in the military. And really? Nobody on the Impastato side served. They're all attorneys, doctors. They come from decent money back in New York. Different vibe altogether. And I always thought, man, I'm kind of different from these people. They want to go to museums and ballets, and I want to break dance and do karate and
right.
go to a titty bar or something. Right. I want to do like normal stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
But hearing the history of the other side of the family, that all of them had served. In fact, my oldest brother, Joe, is the one I reconnected with through a website. He's a little older than me. He's a retired Green Beret out of Fort Bragg. And I thought, holy shit. I said, dude, I was a team guy. He was like, what? So it's so crazy that I realized that there's a genetic military bug component in there, that my dad was in the military. His dad's a retired colonel. All of my half brothers, all of the sons served in the Air Force, Marines, and Army.
What are the odds too? I mean, I don't think a lot of people don't realize that there's quite a few brothers in the teams, triplets.
Yeah. Oh, there is.
Yeah.
Is
weird. I mean, yeah. So what year did you join the Navy?
95.
95. Okay. Yeah. And this was before you had a contract to go to Buds. So did you have another rate before you had to go to?
No. So I believe the recruiter. So you go to the recruiter's office and they tell you, well, you have to choose a rate. You have to choose a job. And I'm like, none of this makes sense to me. They try to explain it to you. Hull Tech, they do welding. They give you the sexy version of the job. What Hull Techs really do is they fucking clogged up shitters on ships. They're basically dirty plumbers, but they sell it to you like, oh yeah, you're going to learn how to weld and all this stuff. And so I just kept saying, I don't know, none of this, and he goes, well, what we can do for you, for people like me that don't know what they want, is we have this, you can go in undesignated. And what you do, they sell it to you, really, they're selling you a used car that's a lemon. So I went in undesignated, and they sell it to you like, well, hey, you can actually, you be on the ship, you hang out for a few months, and you see all these other jobs for what they really are, and then you can choose whatever job you want. What they don't tell you is deck division is like slave labor. You ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
That's what happened. I got stuck in deck division and was like, oh shit. Yeah, you can watch all the other rates do their work, but the chances of you going there, that ain't gonna happen. It's very, very rare anyway.
Yeah, I know two guys that have gone to Buds and not made it and have become undesignated. And one of them actually got out of the Navy and is doing well now. But the other guy, I think, was undesignated for like a year or two, and he got to go to corpsman school. So he kind of got lucky. He at least got it. It's one of the more decent jobs in the Navy for sure.
Yeah, I wish I had done corpsman. Yeah.
Yeah. So you definitely was that. So I guess, how long were you undesignated?
Well, I was in the fleet for about a year and a half, and I want to say probably the first year that I was undesignated, while I was on deployment in 96, we did a Westpac. I had decided, so they were grooming me to strike bosun mate. So that's how you're still in prison, but now you're one of the prison guards. You want to become a bosun mate.
Right.
So it sucks, but at least you're one of the dudes kicking back, making the other dudes work.
Right.
And so they took a fancy to me and they were training me up on all the extra stuff. But while I was on bridge watch, where you have to like drive the ship, or you're on the, the left and right side post port and starboard lookouts and stuff, there was the signal bridge, the dudes that hoist flags and do the blinking light, the signalmen. And they were always cool. I was hanging out with them, shooting the shit. And I became friends with the LPO of the signal bridge. He's the leading petty officer, kind of the boss. And he wanted to go to Buds. And I wanted to go to Buds. And we were the only two dudes on the ship. Back then, nobody wanted to go. Everyone in the Navy was like, oh, that's crazy. Why would you want to do that? So it wasn't hard to get a slot if you wanted to go back then. And so me and Donnie decided, hey, we can train together. We would try to, whatever. So he put it in my head, hey, why don't you become a signalman? Screw this bosun mate stuff. I'll talk to senior chief. And I bet after this deployment, if you come over to the signal bridge, he would recommend us both to go to Buds, because signalman rate was going away. It's not necessary because they have computers and ship-to-ship radios, and it's an old leftover from World War II Pearl Harbor shit,
Right.
So I thought, well, hey, that's smart, because if you are essential to the ship, they won't let you leave for special programs. So becoming a signalman, I thought, wow, that's a good move. However, I'm going to betray all the bosun mates now. I'm going to make enemy. Once BM1 knows I don't want to be a bosun mate, that I'm going to get ripped off all the good details. I'm going to get all the shit details. And that's what happened. When I struck signalman, I made it clear that I was going to take the signalman rating exam. Man, they did not like that. I lost all the privileges, had to do all the shit work, and they threatened that if we caught you studying while you're on watch, we're going to send you to captain's mess, all these things.
Damn.
So what was cool is, like, when I was driving the ship, the signalman from the signal bridge would come and just verbally quiz me as I'm driving. So if bosun mate walked in, BM1 walked in, we would just shut up and just hang out. There were no study materials to get caught with. So long story short, I passed by the skin of my teeth. I became an SM3. I went to the signal bridge officially, and bam, we got our orders to Buds. It was so lucky. And we got the same Buds class, me and Donnie.
Okay. So what Buds class did you start with? Did you go the first time through?
215. Yeah, 215 with 215. And Donnie and I, we got the same Buds class together. So we were stoked that at least I knew somebody day one. Yeah. It's a very overwhelming experience. And so we were very happy to have each other there. He ended up getting rolled, I think, in third phase, and then ended up making it. But
that's crazy. Y'all both made it too. That's
yeah. And there's a lot of stories like that, man. He went full 20 years out on the East Coast, man. So
there's a lot of stories where, at least that I've heard, where guys will find a friend from the fleet and they'll go and they'll be super tight, and one of them will quit, and it just
you're done,
crushes the other person.
It's very tough to recover from that. In fact, in Buds, they told us, one thing I liked about Buds is they really tell you the formula for success. They do try to set you up for success, because what they do there to you is challenging enough. They don't have to play these games with you. One of the things they tell you is don't make friends with people right now, because most of you are going away. And if you and I are bros and I quit, now your day just got a lot harder, because you're like, especially if you're from the same hometown and you train together, whatever it is, the fact that I'm gone and we're bros is really going to mess with your head. So they really tell you to don't make friends with anyone till after Hell Week. It's kind of true.
There's a lot obviously out there about Buds. Is there one story in particular that stands out to you from Buds that's either funny or that maybe made an impact, where it was at the turning point where you knew, like, okay, I've got this, I can do this?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that kept me going day to day that I picked up on real quick was the sense of humor in special warfare, naval special warfare. I love Green Berets, but they're not funny. SEALs are funny people. There's a level of comedy in the teams that is unparalleled. I think Robin Williams had to be a founder. I don't know. I have to research that. But even in Buds, the humor, for example, we've all seen videos of Marine boot camp and dudes screaming, and I'm just like, I don't respond to that. Like, I just think it's kind of stupid. The humor in Buds, which they don't really capture, even in the documentaries, because then the instructors try to play it kind of professional. They don't say the crazy shit. But when there's no one around and it's just the class and the instructors, the shit that comes out of their mouth is beyond funny. And sometimes it's sick, demented humor, but it's just funny. And so one of the evolutions that stands out from Hell Week was we're getting surf tortured, all laying in the ocean, like everyone knows, but there was a bonfire up on the beach. And the deal was, if you could come up and tell the instructor cadre a joke and it was funny, you got to sit by the fire. If it wasn't funny, you had to go back to the end of the line and sit in the surf zone. Dude, I tell you, when you're freezing cold, it is really hard to come up with some funny shit. And then the pressure's on because you're like, if I fuck this up, I'm back in the water. But if I nail it, I go to the fire. Yeah. And so it's just stuff like that I really, the class being funny with each other, the instructors being funny with us kind of fighting back and being funny with them.
Yeah.
The little undercurrent of funniness really got me through. And I saw that later on in the teams. Like it was just really unexpected.
That's a good point. I kind of alluded, or Greg alluded to it on our last podcast about some of the cheating that takes place trying to get one over on the instructors. Was there anything that sticks out that you guys did? Just simple things to try to pull one over on the instructors.
Always, all the time. And they tell you, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, but if you get caught, you're going to pay the man. And a lot of this stuff is set up for you to fail, and they want to see your reaction to failure.
Right.
So one of the things was, it was the end of dive phase. We had our final training exercise where we had this little ship. I think it was down on Pier 14 or something, the regular Navy yard there across the bay. And we had to plant explosives on the ship, but these explosives were just improvised. What they did is they had these laundry bags that were weighted and sunk off the side of the ship. And we would go in and insert these little homemade bombs into the laundry bag and then dive out. So we decided to get real creative with what we were going to do. So a lot of classes were like, oh, they want chew or they want booze. And some guys were like, duct taping up a 6-pack of beer, whatever. So we decided that we were going to have an inflatable doll bomb so that we can actuate it, and this inflatable sex doll would float up and kind of give our position away. And so that was a big hit with the instructors, because they typically get the typical booze and chew and whatever that people are putting in the little laundry bags. So it was the little things like that. We were thinking, how can we be different? How can we kind of mess with them and not just be like every other class?
Same old class, right?
Yeah. So actuating a sex doll and having this thing just float up, they were like, what the hell? So they liked that, because typically there's an ass whooping session at the end of the FTX, because it's the last time that phase is going to get to kind of punish you, mess with you, because next day your third phase is problem.
Right.
But they were like, hats off to you guys. Typically we'll thrash you, but for creativity purpose, like it's kind of cool. That back and forth that I thought, it was fun.
Was there like a camaraderie that formed between the instructors and you at that point, or was it still very much like they're the instructors, you haven't earned what we have yet?
No, you bond with them pretty quickly. And I think that's why they're smart to rotate it through phases. Because if you had the same cadre for 6 months, you almost become friends kind of halfway through it. And I think that would get in the way of actually the training, the way it's designed. So I think they're smart, because it's about 2 months every phase approximately. And so by the time you're kind of becoming too close with each other, there's a new group of instructors who don't know you. You have to prove yourself. Well, you have to prove yourself again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, there probably is a turnover with some reputations and stuff. If there's a problem child, they might say, hey, watch out for this dude. He's kind of whatever. But for the most part, they don't know you. You have to start over and prove yourself. You could have been a rock star in first phase and you suck at second phase, and now your life is difficult. So for me, I liked that it kept me on my toes constantly. There was no comfort zone at all.
I think that translates to life too. As soon as you start getting comfortable and stop feeling like, whether it's like a job or a relationship, as soon as you feel like you have to stop trying, that's the end right there.
I think, when people get too comfortable. Yeah, absolutely. And I even saw that in the teams. I think it was 2 or 3 months before my first deployment. We fired our OIC, our officer in charge, because he just wasn't cutting it. Yeah. And so with the leadership of the senior guys in the platoon, we went to our chief and said, hey, LT's got to go. We're a couple months away from deployment, and we just,
that's got to suck. to get fired.
Well, what it
from that
showed
job.
me as a new guy, I'm like, if they can fire the top dude, I'm nobody. Like, you always have to earn your spot at that table. There's no
Yeah,
safe places to just coast, you know?
that's a good example too. I think of how Chiefs run the Navy, because you got some
Yeah.
officer who's in charge of everybody, and
The chief,
he can still
chief's
get fired.
yeah, the chief has power, man. That's
Yeah,
your dude. And so it was tough. You know, the chief said, "Are you guys sure? You know what this is going to do to his career? I mean, he's going to lose his bird. He's going to get sent back to the fleet, and he's years behind where he should be because he's been in, you know, special warfare now with buds and all this stuff for 2-3 years." And we
there's no
just said,
telling what that does to your psyche too.
I'm sure it crushed that poor dude, but for
Yeah.
us, it kept us hungry. Like it showed
Right.
us like, holy shit, every day you're grabbing that next brass ring. Every day you're earning your seat at the table. There is no just kicking back and saying, okay, I'm safe here. Like
I've
it
made
was,
it. Right.
yeah, there is
Yeah.
no, I've made it. Like it's an eternal process. And so it was an eye opener for sure.
So you graduated buds. What team did you go to first?
Team 5. So in buds for us, I think it was second phase at some point. We filled out our dream sheet. Maybe it was early third phase. I can't remember. And they basically tell you choose what coast you want. You know, you probably won't get the first team you want, but you know, if you want to stay in San Diego, pick 1, 3, and 5. If you want to go back east, 2, 4, and 8. So I just chose 5, 3, and 1. I had a neighbor that was a sniper at 5 when I was in the fleet. We became friends. And he kind of explained the personalities of the teams to me. Each team has a different personality. And basically 5 was the pirate squad, kind of the wild group. Even back when it was UDT 11, they were always the troublemakers. And I noticed that running past the compounds for Bud's Chow, you would run by the Team 5 compound and it just sounded like some werewolves were behind the fence. Like you couldn't see through the fence, but the chain link fence would start shaking and shit would start flying over. And it was just like, what the hell's behind this fence? It's crazy.
What was it like checking in to your first team? I think you told a story on Mic Drop. Can you share that? That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So I ended up wanting to go to the pirate squad because of my my neighbor's advice. And it was the first day was something else. Of course, you're excited, you're nervous. You're in your dress uniform. You got your little manila envelope with your orders. You don't know what to do. And right away I go into, I forgot what they called him. In fact, I've reconnected with this guy on Instagram, Steve. It's so funny. He was kind of like the career counselor dude at 5. And so I go in his office and I sit down and what did he say? I'll probably mess it up, but he goes something like, "Do you believe in superheroes?" And I was like, "Yeah," because you're so nervous, you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is kind of weird.
You don't know what to say either.
Yeah. I'm just like, is this a test? Like they're trying to figure out if I'm retarded or something. But he goes, "You believe in superheroes?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I think every superhero should have a superhero song. You want to know what my song is?" And then I said, "Sure." And he starts playing Beastie Boys, "Girls, you know, in the morning, girl." And he starts dancing around and I'm thinking, wow, this isn't what I expected. This is kind of creepy, man. So anyway, he tells me yada, 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 go out there. They're forming up, you know, find the back of this formation. And so I did that. And as I leave his building, I go out there and there's a forklift in the middle of this big open grinder area. And hanging off this forklift is a dude who's naked, hanging upside down, but parts of him are beehived in duct tape. And there's a sign hanging from him that says, "Doesn't want to drink with my buddies." And I'm thinking, all right, this is a little more of what I expected. Okay. But I realized like this poor dude's like turning purple, man. He don't look good. He's been up there for a little while and everyone's kind of ignoring him. No one's paying attention. I see all the platoons forming up. Headquarters platoon, I'm kind of in the back of it hiding. And I see the other, you know, platoons forming up, all rowed out. And I'm looking back at poor dude, you know, who's just kind of like wiggling there. And sure as shit, people come out. The CO ends up coming out. Everyone's doing their thing. Platoons are sounding off and reporting. And again, no one's paying attention to poor, "Doesn't want to drink with my buddies," dude. And then at some point, the CO says, "Hey, I think we got like a couple new guys. Where are you at?" And I'm like, "Oh, fuck, dude." So I'm kind of looking around, and just typical for new kid in school, I just kind of raise my hand and they come on up here. And So kind of like they tried to show in the movies, you go up there and the CO is like super nice, he's like, whatever. You walk up and shake his hand. Hey, I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you. And I went to say hi. And he goes, well, why don't you just tell everybody about yourself? And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. And so you turn around and you're just looking at like a couple hundred angry fucking dudes. And as soon as you start to talk about yourself, everyone yells, shut the fuck up. And you're just like, okay. And they let you kind of sit out there in that awkward pause. And then the CO just kind of patted me on the back and said, just welcome to 5, whatever, fall back in. So you're like, God damn, man. So formation ends. No one's still paying attention from forklift dude there. They tell me to go into this locker room and find a locker, the Master Arms locker room. And as soon as I get in there, there's a naked dude, duct tape. I'm seeing a theme repeat itself here. Nudity and duct tape is very popular. And he's duct taped to the bench and 2 guys are beating him with swim fins. And I'm thinking, now it's starting to feel like my first day in prison. I'm like, how do I not end up forklift dude or naked guy on the bench in the locker room, dude? Like, what? Yeah. What are these guys doing? So anyway, I ended up throwing my shit in the locker and I ran around behind the building and I just kind of sat down on the ground against the building going, what have I gotten into? Like, I almost wanted to cry, but I didn't want to get caught crying, because then I'll be one of the duct tape dudes. Yeah, the new guy's crying. Fuck him up. Like, oh.
How long did how long did it take before you got your new guy hazing?
Well, so the process is now you're a new guy at 5 and they assign you're on probation. And our probation lasts, they say about 6 months, but it just depends on when STT back then would rotate up. So they just assigned me to the airloft. That's your only job. You go to the airloft, you report to the senior chief back there, and they just want to make sure you show up on time, you work hard, you're retaining information, and they give you a Trident board book, which is as thick as a New York City phone book. It's just huge. And then it's your job to run around to different departments and ask questions and say, hey, on this page, it says this and that. Can you help me? You're supposed to kind of beg for knowledge, to go around on your own and ask for help. And there's usually a handful of other new guys who are a little ahead of you that will kind of guide you. And so once you're done with that, there might be some training that pops up. Like I think I went to SEER school during that period to get some schools in. You're waiting for STT, which is now SQT, to form up. Once that formed up, you went through that. That was 3.5, 4 months. Then you come back to your team, and now you're eligible to test for your Trident. So I got my Trident. I passed first try, luckily, and then I got assigned to a platoon. It was probably our 3rd or 4th training trip with the platoon that I got the official new guy hazing, which is what you're always waiting for. Because when you get your Trident, there's kind of the beat down in the platoon space because you get assigned to a platoon. And it's nothing crazy. You just take the frogs off the back of your Trident and they punch it in your chest. Then you go out to Danny's and McPee's that night and, you drink with the boys. And that's kind of your official welcoming to the community, but your platoon hasn't welcomed you. And you don't know when it's coming, but you know it's coming. And you hope it's coming because the only guys that don't get hazed are guys they don't like.
Right.
And so you're like, oh man, I haven't gotten hazed yet. Am I a shitbag? Do they not like me? But I always had good relationships with everyone. I knew they liked me and I worked hard. And so I knew it was coming. And thank God I actually got it when we were in Nyland, our desert training facility. Cause I'd rather get hazed in warm weather than, for example, the dudes that got hazed in Kodiak, Alaska. I felt real bad for them. And we made a pact as new guys. I don't think I had been hazed yet, but one guy had been hazed. Yeah, he got hazed at a Camp Pendleton trip. So there was a little handful of us new guys that said, hey, in Kodiak, because it's cold up here, we're not going to let them haze anyone. So if they go after, we're all going to like pile in together. And that didn't happen. They came in and snatched up dude in the middle of the night in our bunk room. And we all just like turned our backs to the poor guy. And he got drug out there in the snow and stripped down naked and duct taped to a fence. And anyway, his name was Timmy. I think he's still in. But he was so pissed. He wasn't pissed he got hazed. He got pissed that
you guys.
Yeah, we broke the pact. Speaking of honor, we did not honor our.
There you go. Yeah.
So, but I was glad that I didn't get it in Kodiak. I got it in the desert facility and it wasn't bad. It's a typical, nudity, duct tape,
Drinking.
shave some hair from here, glue some hair there, whatever. Nothing crazy. It was all good fun.
It sounds like they've kind of gone away from that, at least officially. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing. In fact, I just was messaging back and forth with a guy that just retired from the teams, and his last duty station was a bud instructor. And he was telling me how even buds is now politically correct. The woke culture's in full effect there. And I was heartbroken. I said, really? I said, man, to me, the writing on the wall was when the ethos became
I was about to bring that up.
Gender neutral terminology. And I'm just like, look, if that's what we're worried about as a fighting force is pronouns, I mean, that's our enemies still want to kill us, but why are we so worried about these silly little things? And so things like hazings were camaraderie, and it was a controlled environment in the teams. I mean, it was organized chaos.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, no one's ever been killed in a hazing. I mean, I don't know. Things can happen. You get
seriously
guys
injured,
drunk.
maybe, but no one's ever died.
Yeah, but it is a part of that bonding. And I know how I felt when my hazing was over. They picked me up out of this puddle, handed me a beer, and said, "Welcome to the platoon, brother." And there's nothing like that genuine feeling of like these guys accepted me, they respect me, they've watched me for a while, they trust me,
and you've earned it.
And what are they overall? What is that whole community processing you to do to go overseas and be in combat? I mean, to deal with stress, to deal with uncertainties, to be able to suck it up through certain situations. So I think in peacetime and in training, if we minimize this, and we don't want to use bad words, and we don't want to put people in difficult situations, now when we throw them into a city filled with ISIS fighters, they're going to freak out.
Yeah, I mean, especially like the regular military, you've kind of seen woke culture infiltrate, but then when you start seeing SOCOM hiring a diversity,
it's
whatever his position was called, and it's from an outside perspective, it can't seem productive, honestly.
No, you're not focused on what you're there for. To me, you need to focus on the standards, and that's it. Yeah. And if you want to open it up to females and all that stuff, as long as the standards aren't compromised, I don't give a shit.
Right.
As long as you meet the standards, I just don't want the standards to be compromised. And historically, the standards are compromised to try to get as many different types of people into a community as possible. In special warfare, that's just a death sentence, man.
Did you hear about the first female Green Beret that Indeed in her house?
I did. I heard about that. Yeah. In fact, I have a buddy who's he's retiring soon. He's involved in the special forces community. So I got a little bit of, and I had to call him up, be like, bro, are you kidding me? Is this true?
Yeah. I thought it was satire. Like I thought it was actually like an Onion article or like.
Yeah, no, it happened. I'm like, gosh, dang, man. So, and I've heard different rumors about, when this type of thing happens that, sometimes the cadre is told, hey, this person will pass, because it's a political push. Like
from what I heard, she got 3 attempts at the Q course when other guys would not have gotten that same. And that's the whole thing is when you push people through for political, to say that, under my administration or under my leadership, we got the first X.
Yeah. I don't think it's not a novelty game of the first this or first that. We just need the best people available for any position, whether it's political positions, military positions. I really think we need to have standards, and those standards are adhered to. Yeah. And, I always bring in this, look at professional sports. Look at the NFL, for example. There's a very specific, obvious makeup of the NFL that imagine if the woke diversity people went to the NFL and said, hey, NFL needs to be 30% Asian, 30% white, and 30% black. And what, you know what I mean? The NFL will be like, hey, listen, we pick the best. If half of them happen to be this color or 80%, we don't care. We get the best performers. It's not about that. So I kind of respect professional sports because the bottom line is wins, which equals money and revenue and all that. So why can't other aspects of our society just be performance-based?
And it seemed like the military for the longest time was really a meritocracy where if you performed well, you got
rewarded for it.
You got rewarded. Yeah. But now And who knows? I mean, Jesus, where it's going to be in 5-10 years. I mean,
well, I think it'll get to a point where we get our pee-pee slapped by some enemy somehow, and then we have to throw all that shit out the window and get back to, the way it should be.
It goes back to the what is it? Weak men produce weak times produce hard men produce good times.
It's that cycle. And we're in that part now where things have been too good for too long, and we have this soy boy culture running around.
And it's got to make you think, like, China's over here genetically engineering.
Yeah. Well, they even have programs now where they're trying to make their men more masculine because of what they call the Korean wave. All this K-pop boy band shit where they're real feminine. Oh, trust me, my Thai daughter's in the middle of that. I'm like, oh my God, what is K-pop? Will you explain this to me? The most feminine looking dudes. Yeah. And then I show her a picture of like Schwarzenegger, like, no, this is the guy you should look at. This is the, poor girl. But the Chinese they're trying to combat that by injecting masculinity into their youth, whereas we're doing the opposite. We're telling them it's bad,
Right. And I think it's kind of like the only reason you can say that is because you're in a country that would be like, yeah, that's fine. And if you choose to be a feminine dude, like, more power to you.
Yeah.
But in other places of the world, you can't do that. So you better be freaking grateful that you live in this country where you can choose that luxury. And that's where I think people who are bitching about how bad everything is here.
Yeah, I would love. I mean, been anywhere else. Yeah, I wish I could snap my fingers and have them go to Afghanistan for a month or something.
Yeah. So this is all pre 9/11 when you were in the teams at 5. How many deployments did you do at 5?
I just did 1 deployment, 2 workups, and it was just before my second deployment. My divorce kicked off, and it was just miserable. So yeah, I had to be honest. And a lot of people aren't, and it causes a lot of problems, but I had seen some things in my time in the team. So I went to my platoon chief and I said, hey chief, this is what's going on. And I'm not okay. I'm pretty down and out. And I don't think I should be in the platoon anymore. The last thing I need to do is CQB and accidentally shoot the guy in front of me, or I'm not paying attention when I'm packing a parachute. It was tough.
Yeah.
Because I knew the teams is kind of strange. When you're in a platoon, you're in your own little world. When you're a part of headquarters platoon, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of senior guys involved. So I knew I would be leaving the protection of my platoon. And we were real deep into our second workup. The reward for a long workup is the deployment. The deployment's the easy part. The workup is the part that sucks. And so I wanted to get that second deployment under my belt, but I just knew, like, things at home were bad, financially bad between me and the old lady, all this stuff. 2 kids involved. Had it been just me and the old lady, who cares? But when you got 2 little ones, they were probably 4 and 5, somewhere in there. Yeah. Real vulnerable little ones. So my platoon chief went to the OIC. Good guys. Most of my platoon was leftovers from the first platoon I did. So it was Foxtrot platoon both times. So they knew me. They knew that I was doing the right thing, and I wasn't being a wuss or nothing. And they actually, said that they were impressed that I would think that much about the platoon. Yeah.
Had the courage to speak up and speak what you needed.
A lot of guys won't. And then they start doing weird shit because their mind's not in the game. And when you're doing things like CQB or packing explosives, like, if you're not 100% dialed in, like, bad things could really happen. So
every day you could kill somebody on accident,
and I don't want to be that guy or live with it. So I had to do that. And then times got tough when I was in headquarters platoon. Long story short, I started getting in kind of a pissing contest with my command master chief, which, when you're young and emotional, you just don't give a fuck. Because I was so down and out. I was a pretty dangerous man. I had nothing to lose. So I wasn't afraid to lock horns with my master chief. But what I didn't realize is that no matter what, you can't piss on rank. In the end, rank will win. So anyways, I ended up asking for an admin separation after several months. I wanted to be left alone, to be honest, for 6 months to a year. And they did that for a while. They put me in the airloft where I could still use my air skills, packing parachutes, certifying pallets. I felt like I was still contributing to the team until I could re-enter platoon life. But the command master chief just had other plans for me. So at some point I went to the CO and said, hey man, if you guys ain't going to leave me alone, I'm going to find something else out there. This isn't working out.
I want to talk to you about something too, because I think, and I've talked to my friend Edward about this, about bringing it up. So your whole life, you want to be a team guy, and they have this mystique, and it's your dream. And then you join that community, and if I'm sure at first you're kind of, oh, holy shit, like, every first time you do something, like, holy shit, that was badass. But eventually it becomes the standard. Like, you're one of the boys.
Yeah.
You have to get used to it. And then, like you said, like, I'm sure your first day you probably wanted to have locked horns with the Master Chief.
Yeah.
But here you are later on. Did you start to want to pursue other things outside of the military? I mean, were you looking like, oh, look what I could do outside of the military, or do I want to go to Dam Neck, or do I want to do, like, what was kind of going through your head as you got more, or I guess got used to being a team guy?
I mean, I loved the team guy lifestyle for sure. I loved the training. I was disappointed in my first deployment. We ended up being more like frat boys with guns. We just traveled around Asia and got drunk. Obviously, the world was a very different place. That was back in 2000. My deployment in the fleet was a lot more eventful. I was surprised. My deployment to the Persian Gulf in 96, there's actually some shit that went down I was like, well, shit, if the regular Navy's this dope, what's the team's going to be like? Then I get to the teams and I'm like, this is really stupid. Like, I'm having fun, but all we're doing is getting boozed up and chasing women. Like, I mean, I could do that on my own. Like, I didn't go through buds is legit as hell. Platoon workup was even more legit. Like, I mean, I'm like, damn, there's got to be all of this training. It's like making the Denver Broncos, but then you just sit on the bench. Like, nah, dude, put me in. I want to play. Like, you telling me there's no bad guy we can go mess with anywhere in the world? Like, why are we just sitting here in Thailand drunk? Like, this is stupid. It's a waste of talent. And that's one of the reasons why I left too, is I looked around. There was only one guy in my platoon that had a combat action ribbon. I'm like, how is this possible?
What was that from? What theater?
He was in Somalia in 93, the whole Mogadishu thing. He was a sniper there.
Okay.
And so that kind of concerned me. I'm like, look, I know it's peacetime, but special operations should always be doing something. I mean, even if it's reconnaissance work or beefing up embassy security somewhere, like there's plenty of go to Eastern Europe and mess with some shit, or go do some drug ops in South America with some Green Beret. I mean, there's got to be something. What are we doing here just boozing it up in Asia? So I looked around the team and there were guys that had spent their whole nothing, hadn't seen shit. And I just, for all the sacrifice, the divorce, the losing my wife and kids, I'm like, this ain't worth it. Just to be a frat boy with a gun. I'm just, little did I know 9/11 was right around the corner.
Yeah. So how soon after you got out was 9/11?
5 months.
And when you saw that, what were you thinking? Shit. Like,
I was like, man, it's like quitting the team and they make it to the Super Bowl. But I thought that at first, but I immediately, because I asked for an admin separation. So it's not like I got out necessarily on bad terms. I still got I didn't get like a dishonorable discharge or nothing. I could have gone back in. But I called some of my buddies and was asking, like, what are you guys doing? Holy shit. Like, I got to get back in. This is crazy. And luckily I hadn't been out long enough to really be like comfortable being a civilian. Like, I still 5 months after 6 years of the Navy at that point. And my buddies, all of them I talked to said, we're not doing shit. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is like the thing. This is like Pearl Harbor. What do you mean you're not doing shit? All of them said, if you want to get back in the fight, go Army. Big Army's in charge of the battlefield, Green Berets and Rangers. If you want to get back in the fight. And I was really surprised by that. More than one team guy buddy said, Green Berets and Rangers. And that was the early days of Afghanistan. I mean, obviously this blossomed into multiple huge theaters where everybody got involved. But the information they were giving me was based on the first push in Afghanistan, which was obviously very Army heavy. So in my active duty time, I had made friends with some first group SIF guys out of Okinawa. So I hit them up and I told them, man, all my buddies are saying teams ain't doing shit. Like, maybe I should go in what's your advice on like the SF community? I wasn't too interested in Rangers. Never really worked with them. Just knew they were kind of militant like Marines. Yeah. I'm more of laid back, happy dude. So the teams, Green Berets, probably more my cut.
Right.
And so all of them said the quickest way into the Green Beret community is through 19th or 20th group, which is their reserve components through the National Guard. Then once you're in, it would be easy to switch to active duty and go to third group or whatever. I don't speak Green Beret fluently. But that's exactly what I did. So when I left the teams, spent some time in Thailand to decompress. That's actually when 9/11 popped off. So I got motivated to come back to the States. Ended up joining 19th Group out of Colorado, where I'm from.
Nice.
And loved it. Loved training with those guys. They treated me like a fellow team guy.
How close were you to like where you grew up?
That was outside of Denver, so I grew up about an hour and a half south of where this facility was.
Was your mom still there?
Mm-hmm.
Were you able to see them more? So you're like, okay,
yeah,
this is
absolutely.
cool.
It was great. Yeah. I was back in Colorado. I ended up initially staying with my mom for a little bit, but then moved in with a buddy downtown.
Yeah.
And was having a blast. And really enjoyed training with these guys. I was just doing some private security guard work in the meantime, training with these 19th Group guys.
Did you have to go to boot camp? Did you have to go to Army boot camp?
No. So when I went to the National Guard recruiter, that was some of my questions. Like, fuck, what do we do with all this? And he said, nope, we can bring you straight across as an E5. I was like, holy shit, that's cool. Then he tried to call me back like a week later and said, hey, sorry, we can bring you in as an E3. And I'm like, absolutely not. I did 6 years in the Navy, 2 deployments.
Yeah.
I earned my E5. Like, I'm a legit E5. And he go, okay, hold on, let me call you back. All right, we can bring you in straight across. And then I reported to outside of Watkins, Colorado, is where their 19th Group dudes are. And like I said, had fun training with them. And I was really excited because I thought, damn, if I could be fully qualified on the blue side and the green side, just overall as an operator, the knowledge base I'll have. Like, I was really excited about this. And even in my time in the teams, to be honest, I felt I had more in common with the Green Beret dudes we were working with, the first group guys. I bonded with more.
Right.
The teams, they were more laid back. They were a little older, and I was a little bit older.
Yeah.
They were just more laid back, more comfortable in their own skin. The younger team guys I was hanging out with were just taking their shirts off and beating their chests and doing push-ups and running around. And these SF guys were just kind of in button-down collared shirts, chilling. It's more of a gentleman's club,
a little more humble.
It was. I noticed that a little bit more professional. And I still to this day defend the Army that they are the true silent professionals because it's very rare. My community is very guilty of being Insta famous in books and movies and whatever. But the Army versions are very low key. And so I've always
definitely a difference there. So what happened with 19th Group? How far did you pursue SF before? I know you ended up in contracting. So
yeah. So with the SF thing, I was super pumped. I was training with them. And the guys were like, hey, listen, we're going to get you orders to go to Fort Bragg to go through the Q course. And the good news is you don't have to go through selection. You can show right up for second phase, which is SUT, small unit tactics. And I was very weary of this. I said, are you sure? Because I've seen there was a Green Beret like 2 classes behind me in Buds, and he had to go to Buds one day with everybody.
Yeah.
It's just how it is. And I get it. And I expected to do the same thing. And they were like, nope, you're a fully qualified operator. You've been overseas. It's absolutely ridiculous to send you to selection, which is a stupid land nav course. You're doing the STAR course. It's stupid. And I just said, I've seen it where other people come into Buds and they don't just get plugged right into second phase or third phase. Like, they have to go through the whole shit sandwich.
Take your licks.
Yeah, you just got to pay your dues. And I don't want any favors. And they were like, nope, you're our guy. We want you back here, because they had just come off a big deployment in Afghanistan. And so those guys all had combat experience, ready to rock and roll. And so they said, we want to get you into a team. And I said, that sounds great, but I would hate to go out to Fort Bragg and I'm causing trouble, because I already feel like I'm going to be this weird dude, a SEAL, going through the Q course, because it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
There's already going to be enough attention. I was the gray guy in Buds. I ain't going to be the gray guy going through the Q course. I'm going to.
No joke. Right.
So I went out there with this waiver for selection, and what I was afraid would happen happened. The guy that was in charge of me the first day, as we're all lined up, he's running his mouth, walking up and down the ranks, and he stops and sees my trident. And it's just like, what the fuck are you doing here? I was just like,
well, it just sounds bad. A selection waiver.
Yeah. Well, he brought me in his office and he's like going through my file. He goes, you haven't been through selection? Like, he's just kind of pissed off, kind of confused. And I just said, listen, Sergeant, I get it. I'm with you. I only know what my unit has sent me here to do with this paperwork. So he's like, all right, let me make some phone calls and try to figure it out. So the next day I go to his office and he's like, bro, you're an E5 in the Army, but you haven't been through a sergeant's course. I think they call it PLDC or whatever course they have. For E6, it's like, I don't know, A-knock, B-knock, whatever. They got all these leadership courses they make you go through,
Right.
which we don't have in the Navy. We have a different promotion system. So he's like, bro, we got to send you through the sergeant's course at Camp McCall. Then they just added SOPC 1 and SOPC 2, which is Special Operations Preparation Course 1, Special Operations Preparation Course 2. All these things you got to do before you show up for second phase, small unit tactics. I said, listen, I'm not asking for favors. I'm willing to do anything. I just know what my unit back in Colorado has sent me here with this piece of paper. So what it turned into, he said, look, I don't even want you in my phase. I'm going to turn you over to the National Guard Liaison Office. You report to them, and then they will figure out this mess. So what it was an argument between Fort Bragg and my unit back in Colorado, mom and dad fighting, like alcoholic divorcing parents. And I'm just this troubled teenager in the middle, like, and the National Guard, I every day for months, I would report. And it got to the point, he's like, just don't even come in, dude, just call, because nothing's happening. And I told the National Guard liaison guy, look, I'm willing to do any phase of training. You don't have to necessarily do it in order. For example, I could have gone to SEER school, could have gone to language school,
right,
my MOS school, Robin Sage, whatever. Some things maybe have to happen first, but they wouldn't let me into any phase of training. So I had a buddy that was at Demnick at the time, so I call him up, and I'm like, dude, this really fucking blows. Like, this is what's going on. I've been here for months. I haven't even been able to participate in any phase of training. They don't know. It's this argument between. So he told me about our Team 1 buddy, Beastie. He said, hey, man, call him up. He's doing some weird shit with DynCorp. They're protecting the president of Afghanistan or something. He said, it's great. It's like platoon life, but they get paid like fucking admirals.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Really? That's a like soldier of fortune shit? He goes, yeah, dude, it's real, man. You know, Beastie's out there doing it. So I got in touch with him via email, and he was like, bro, yes, you're going to love it. Let me put you in touch with the DynCorp recruiter. You can explain your situation to him at Fort Bragg. I'm sure they'll be able to do something. So that's what happened. I got in touch with this dude named Bob Casper, who's a really good knife maker. He ended up dying a while back. But anyway, I explained the situation to Bob. He got in touch with the National Guard liaison, and my unit back home, they were so cool. The 19th Group dudes, they were so embarrassed. This captain back there was so cool. He goes, bro, we're going to put you IR. We wish you luck, man. Have fun with the State Department. No strings attached. Like, I don't know why we couldn't get you plugged in there, but that chain of command was, I do know there have been some SEALs that have made it through. In fact, when I was there at Fort Bragg, quick funny story, I was with a couple of my first group SIF dudes from Okinawa. They were out there at 18 Fox course. It was like one of their intel courses. And we went to this bar where a lot of Delta guys drink. I call it the CAG Cabaret.
Right.
You can always tell who they are, man. They look real cheesy. I love my Delta guys. But so we went there, and one of my buddies had gone to the unit, and we hooked up with him. We're having a few beers, and he introduced me to the sergeant major of training, apparently, and I don't speak Army very fluently, but whoever this sergeant major was goes, hey, I heard you're going through the Q course. He goes, why didn't you try out for us? And I was like, well, I didn't know I could. He goes, oh, through the National Guard, you could have come right to our doorstep. I'm like, well, now you tell me. I'm going contracting, bro. I'm going to go make some money. But he told me, he goes, we have a dev group guy going through our selection right now. He was a dev group guy. He became like a forest ranger for like 10 years, but this is in 2002 when I was at Bragg. He goes, but because of 9/11, he wants to come back in on the green side, and he's kicking ass at our selection course. Fast forward to about 3 years ago, I saw that dude pop up on Instagram.
I think I know who you're talking about. I think I saw his face.
Yep, he's got a trident, all this. He's the only Delta guy that I know of, a team guy. And I'm like, dude, that's the guy.
That could have been
was
me.
Going through selection. I was like, bro, that could have been me. Fuck.
Yeah.
So it was cool though that I heard about that dude. And I thought, what a badass that guy is to go from tier 1 to tier 1.
Yeah,
that's a dude, man.
So
humbling, man.
You get to DynCorp.
Yes, love it.
So you haven't, because where was your first deployment again? To Asia, correct?
With DynCorp?
With the teams.
Yeah. So in the fleet, I went to the Persian Gulf, and with the teams, it was Southeast Asia.
Okay, so you get to DynCorp, and where's the first place you go with DynCorp?
Israel.
And most people, especially my age, probably don't realize that people are going to Israel.
Yeah, me either. I never really occurred to me. You hear stuff in the news growing up, and I knew there had been some wars with some neighboring Arab countries. I knew terrorism was a constant threat.
Right.
The American media, for the most part, has a pro-Israeli spin to it. Like, you don't hear much. You just think they're kind of our little brothers, and they are in many ways. So DynCorp for me was great because I knew my buddy Beastie, that if he's involved in it, like, he's a good, legit dude. Because it still was, contracting back then was in its infancy. Like, it wasn't a thing yet. So now this is 2003, and it was still, I guess we were kind of the second wave to go in. The
Right.
senior guys had gone in and kind of set things up, and then we were like the first wave of worker bees to get pushed in there in any large numbers. And selection was pretty down and dirty. It was just 3 weeks out in Virginia to make sure you could still shoot and shit. They taught you some mobile security things. Nothing.
Any trouble there, or was it pretty?
No, it was
course.
Pretty easy. It was all guys from special operations background. Back then for DynCorp, you had to be SEAL Delta or SF. So it was all good dudes.
Yeah.
And again, it was just kind of checking boxes. The State Department just watching to make sure you're still sharp. The rub was, we thought we were going to Afghanistan, and then the last minute they told us we're going to Israel. So I was like, okay, shit. All right. So I left a lot of cold weather gear in my hotel room. I'm like, well, I guess I was prepared for the winter time in Afghanistan. But we ended up in Israel, and I tell you, it was just really amazing to me. I mean, it was a mystery. It was a Scooby-Doo mystery for a long time to figure it out. All the leadership in country on our detail was all retired Delta guys, super smart, been operators 20, 25 years, very good at their craft. And so I took a lot of notes, and I felt like finally I'm doing some real world shit. Like, I'm not just boozing it up in the Philippines or, Bali or where. I mean, it just was like, holy shit. We got issued our shit, and we were in Gaza the next day. And it was within my first week we were getting shot at. I mean, we were taking rounds as we were driving out, and it was just like, holy fuck, there's people trying to kill us. Like, I was kind of excited, like, this finally, all this training, all this shit, this is put me in, coach. Like, it was finally
there.
That's what it felt like. Like, finally, at some level, all of this shit's being validated because we're actually on a two-way range. We're in,
And who was the enemy that y'all were fighting or protecting, whoever you were protecting from? Can you kind of talk about what you were doing there and who was in play?
Yeah, absolutely. Mostly the biggest threat was Hamas was real big in Gaza, but just Islamic extremists. I think Islamic Jihad was big in the West Bank, and just basically Palestinian extremists in the area. Lots of different groups, but the big one was Hamas. And by no means am I a terrorism expert, but you would see their flags everywhere, the creepy green flags.
Yeah.
I ended up snatching one up, which was great.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, a little game of capture the flag, but they were the biggest threat. And so we were with the State Department doing mobile security, and it was under U.S. aid. So there were lots of different missions to help with the infrastructure in Gaza and in the West Bank, because the wars have been going back and forth for generations there.
Right.
And the state of Gaza is pretty dire. I mean, there's a lot of bombed out buildings. It's the highest unemployment rate per square mile on the planet. It's very crowded. At that time, the Israelis were kind of using it as a penal colony. So if I messed up in the West Bank, they would deport me and my whole family to Gaza as kind of like a little prison system. So job, unemployment, it was very, very bad. So part of what USAID was trying to do is rebuild schools. That was a big mission, but it was very difficult, not to make excuses for the bad guys, but I'm sure a lot of them thought we were Israeli special forces. Here are white guys with guns driving around in armored vehicles. So we became a target. And also the IDF, the military, well, who the fuck are these guys? There was no deconfliction of who these guys are, just random. We had tanks swinging around on us and shit. We've been in the area where F-16s would come in and do strikes.
Was there ever any blue on blue between IDF and DynCorp?
No, not that we know of. I mean, oftentimes we never knew who was shooting at us. Back then it was just get off the X. Like, we would get out of there. We didn't even have the ability to return fire unless you were to compromise the integrity of the vehicle and open a door, which you wouldn't do unless it was disabled.
Right.
Later on, we developed this hatch system. We could pull this metal roof back and pop out and shoot.
That's cool.
But in the early days, we were just sitting ducks. So we would just haul ass out of there. So it could have been, I don't think it would be the Israelis because they're pretty good about identifying targets and we look like them. Right. I think it was more of the random bad guys. It's, oh, hey, look at this motorcade. They don't care who. They just know it's none of their people.
Right. Was this? They're just the Westerners. Was this first? Was this first trip to Israel a moment where you were like, "Holy shit! Like, I'm grateful for X in America"? Or is there any like things you can talk about from your time in Israel, from that first trip, where like we have it pretty good here? I wish people would stop bitching.
Yeah, almost immediately. I saw buses blow up, cafes blow up. Not only were we working in different red zones like Gaza and the West Bank, but living in Jerusalem proper, Israel proper, you had to deal with all the acts of terrorism. Trash can outside our apartment got blown up, constant gunfire at night. It was very, everyone's armed, Uzi slung, M4 slung, armed security at McDonald's. So it was just like, it took a while to get used to it. So It made me think like, God, the people back home have it so good. Like you can go into a McDonald's and you don't have to think there's probably a good chance this might get blown up today. Yeah. Probably not going to get blown up in America. So yeah, it was very, lots of armed, heavily armed, like SWAT cops on dirt bikes driving around. Looked like a Chuck Norris movie. Yeah. Very militant vibe going on over there.
People talk about our police force becoming this militarized, and then you look at Israel, and like everyone has guns.
They are, yeah, everyone does, yeah. I mean, you could see a hot chick at a wherever with an Uzi pizza shop, and an Uzi just slung, and you're like, wow, damn. You go to the mall, same thing, you know. But just to get into the mall, they have to search your car with the little swipes in the mirrors, looking for explosives, pop the trunk, wand you, like just to go to the mall. That's crazy. And then you go inside the mall and everyone's got rifles slung and it's just, but you're shopping. You're, Old Navy, but everyone's got Uzis.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that puts things into perspective. How long did you spend in Israel, and did you make several trips there, or did you go right to Afghanistan or Iraq after that?
No, I was there for 2 years. I did 5 trips in and out.
Wow.
Over the 2 years. And really, really got to enjoy it because it was somewhat normal in that you could go out to dinner, you could go out and have a couple drinks. We had 2 teams up in Tel Aviv, so on the weekends we'd go visit them. You go hang out on the beach. Tel Aviv is almost like Miami, except stuff blows up. But other than that, it's great.
That's cool.
But what happened is we lost the embassy contract to Triple Canopy.
Okay, yeah. So, other players are coming into the works. Blackwater, and
in the old days, it was just DynCorp was the big player for the mobile security for embassies around the world. And then former DynCorp employees with better military backgrounds than the original crew started to form their own shit. So some former DynCorp guys who were Delta guys formed Triple Canopy. Same thing with Blackwater. Excuse me. It was very team guy heavy.
Right.
So now the State Department was interested in the new hot chick in town. Like, oh, all these Delta guys are over here. Oh, all these SEALs are over here. So DynCorp lost a lot of territory. So when we lost the contract, which surprised us because we all thought, it was my 6th week when Cheese and the boys got killed in Gaza. And so we had a lot of guys quit. A lot of guys realized how dangerous it was. A bunch of us decided to stay because we realized why they were paying us so well.
Can you, if you're comfortable, can you talk about what happened that day where you were?
Yeah, for sure. It was, like I said, it was our 6th week there. So a little over a month. We're just slowly starting to figure out, what we're doing. Gaza was a big focus. There were a lot of good talks with President Abbas, who's the president of the Palestinian movement. And he's very different than a Yasser Arafat or the PLO. Like he actually cares about his people. He cares about somehow trying to figure out a relationship with the Israelis. He was interested. In fact, I took Condoleezza Rice to his personal residence in Gaza multiple times. Our team did. So he was very open to dialogue with America, with trying to figure out peace agreement. The problem is Hamas didn't like him, and Hamas really runs. It's kind of like
the
law enforcement.
In Mexico?
Well, I was going to say, like, the cartels or the gangs in LA or.
Right.
So We had a lot of interest in Gaza, and especially President Abbas. And I personally got to meet the guy, and I'm sure he doesn't remember me, but he was very kind. His staff always kept feeding us these biscuits and tea, and they were very hospitable. But it just sucked to get to his place. You had to go through a lot of bad neighborhoods, man. It was like the Middle Eastern version of Compton, I guess. It was sketchy. So we used to get our schedules on a weekly basis. We would get printed out and handed to him at the embassy, and we would kind of know. We had 5 teams at the time, 2 in Tel Aviv and 3 in Jerusalem. I was part of the J-Town crew, and so we would kind of figure out what we were doing per week. And that week, like I said, we had been shot at several times. It wasn't that uncommon, but we were in armored vehicles. It was small arms fire. But we all knew the big threat was bombs, roadsides, because they blow up Israeli tanks in there all the time, Israeli armored Jeeps.
Wow.
We have armored Suburbans, which are like coffee cans compared to a tank.
Right.
We knew the real threat was coming. So one of these weekly schedules, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, same checkpoint, same time. And we were like, there's only a couple ways in this place. And we kept using the same checkpoint. And we expressed our concerns right away to the RSO, the regional security officer, the State Department guy.
Right.
And he was like, doesn't matter. It's got to go. They don't care. They get their schedules for whatever reason, the windows of opportunity, and they roll with it. So we go in there on a Tuesday, and there were 3 things I noticed that really disturbed me that we ended up reporting back to the SRO or the RSO. One is, as soon as we would cross the Erez checkpoint going into Gaza, the Israeli side, then there was like 100 yards of no man's land, real creepy. And then you would hit a Palestinian checkpoint. And as soon as we passed the Palestinian checkpoint, I was riding left rear in the follow car, and I look over my shoulder and I see the dude look at his watch, look at our license plate, and write something down. And so I tell our team leader, hey, we just got tagged by a dude. This is what I just saw. He looked at his watch, he looked at our license plate, and he just wrote some shit down. So then we were driving through Gaza City, Gaza, and it was dead quiet. It's always super busy, like Times Square in Manhattan, like it's just busy. Why is it quiet? That's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Obviously the word's out that something's going down. And then on our way back at the end of the day, there was a dude digging in the side of the road, and there's only one road to get out of there. It's a choke point. And there were guys digging in the road. And so I remember telling my team leader, hey, check these dudes out. They're not construction workers. So all 3 of these things were huge red flags that we reported all the way up to the regional security officer. And he didn't care. He said, no, you're going in, the rest of the week. So that was Tuesday. All that shit happens Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we show up to the consulate in Jerusalem. We're changing out for the 9:00 mission. And my team leader comes in and says, hey, take all your shit off. The Marines at the gate want to take pictures of us because there's so many of us new people. It's hard for them to authenticate who we are, but they're going to put pictures up in the guard shack so they can see, okay, yeah, he's part of the, the DynCorp guys. So Tel Aviv is going to hop in and take the first mission, the 11 o'clock, the second mission we'll take, driving USA down to Abbas's place. So, okay, cool, whatever happens. So it was after we took the pictures, we're kitting up for the second mission, that the team leader gets a phone call and just has this look on his face. And he says, DynCorp's been hit. Like there's DynCorp people that are dead. We just don't know if it's Alpha or Bravo team. And so Cheese was team leader for Alpha team. And so I thought, fuck, let me call Cheese. So I left the ready room where we were kitting up, and I went outside and I called. And when he didn't answer, man, I figured he would pretty much answer even in the middle of a gunfight. Like, bro, I can't talk. I got to go now. I'm okay. Bye. Like, he was just that type of dude. Like, he might take a phone call in the middle of squeezing some rounds. And when his phone didn't answer, I just knew it, man. I just knew it in my gut. I knew it. I was just like, oh my God. So I left the voicemail. I just said, Big Cheese, I know what this means, man. I love you. And I remember I was kind of choked up, and I just said, a frogman never forgets. I'll love you forever. And I went back in and I told my team leader, I said, I think it was Alpha that got hit. And Cheese isn't answering his phone, and he got mad. He's like, you don't know that. Don't spread that fucking rumor. And, I get it. Everyone's emotional, not knowing what's happening. No one can get comms with Bravo team. They were actually pushing their way through the checkpoint to go in and try to help them. And we got locked into the consulate. They wouldn't let us leave the consulate. We got locked down because they knew we were strapping up and we were going to roll in hot. So looking back on it was probably a smart decision because we were going to do some damage for sure. We were told to stand down and wait for an FBI investigative team that was responding from the embassy, and we were going to take them in to be their security to recover evidence. And that's what we ended up doing the next morning. We had to go in and recover the vehicle and bomb fragments, and it was rough. You know, you saw pieces of flesh and stuff that was your bros you were drinking with, you know, the prior weekend.
Yeah.
So for me, that was a huge growth point for a lot of us to see that carnage, to see, I've never seen a team member hit before. That was really my introduction to any type of real combat operations, you know.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. I mean, there's some powerful, I mean, you leave in the voicemail, that's a very powerful sentiment, you know, and
yeah,
it's kind of like when you lose friends and you don't delete their number from your phone.
I know. I still
mean,
have, yeah. I just
have
can't
several
do it. Even on
people-
Instagram, I still follow them. You know,
but yeah, I mean, it sounds like that was kind of for everyone there, this was like the holy shit, this is real. The consequences are, this is what the consequences are.
Well, we realized where we were. Like, Israel is a very dangerous place, and it's you're burning the candle at both ends, whether you're in Gaza or in Jerusalem. It's just as dangerous. And these people have been killing each other since biblical times. Like, it's
probably not going away anytime soon.
No, it is such a disagreement. And then it's almost like trying to be a bouncer caught in the middle of a huge bar brawl. And you're just that's what it felt like being an American there. You're just in the way of two groups of people going at it.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of strange behavior from the IDF. They were very suspicious of what we were doing with the Palestinians. And, you know, it was some rough relationships. So for a lot of us, even guys that had seen some combat, we had some Force Recon Marines that had some combat experience. They were even freaked out. It was such a different, the Delta guys that were with us couldn't make sense of a lot of it. It was a very unique experience for all of us.
And it seems like it is a very unique theater because of the geopolitics involved, because you're not at war with it. It's not like we have
no one's officially at war.
Yeah.
The scariest thing too, between the 3 AOs I contracted in, this was the only one that had no U.S. military presence, no big army. We always called it big army.
No QRF.
So when you went into the West Bank or you went into Gaza, IDF ain't gonna save your ass. The best we could do after the attack is we came up, somehow one of our Green Beret dudes hooked up with some IDF snipers, and we were able on our photographer's vests to put certain colors of tape that they could identify that it was us. Wow. It was only through a personal relationship. Otherwise, why wasn't there deconfliction between the State Department and the intel services of the IDF? None of that. Like, it was just throwing you out there to the wolves with no support. Where at least if I fast forward to Afghanistan and Iraq, there was always big army. We always broke bread with our, especially Green Beret brothers or Ranger brothers that were nearby. We would trade cell phone numbers, radio freaks. Right. We could call for help. In Israel, there ain't no one coming. In fact, so there was one guy that survived, Oscar. We named him Jinx. There were 4 guys in the car that got hit, and only one guy survived. In fact, it was the Palestinian police that drove him in the back of their pickup truck to the Israeli checkpoint. So not even the IDF came. No one cared. Wow. It was just, you had some good cops, some Palestinian cops that just threw this dude before the crowd could mob him up.
Yeah.
So it was amazing.
That is, I mean, that's the stuff that you don't hear about.
Yeah. It barely made the news. It was a little blip when it came out. They told us this is going to hit the news. If you need to email some people back home, just don't talk about specifics. Let them know that you're okay, because obviously they know that you're here and there's Americans that have been killed. And it was a very small news report that just said like some CIA guys got blown up in Gaza initially. Right. And that was all that made the news initially. Since then, there's been a couple articles and that clarified we were contractors. And back then, everyone thought you were CIA. It was funny. You could hear them talk. Oh, CIA's here. And then fast forward, it was, oh, Blackwater's here. Everyone thought you were Blackwater everywhere you went.
So you get back to the States, and then you end up in Iraq or Afghanistan next.
Afghanistan. So we ended up losing the embassy to Triple Canopy, and they offer you to step across because you know the area and you've made contacts, you know the Terps and all that. But I said, no, I've been here 2 years. You know, DynCorp is still in Afghanistan. I've been with the company now for a few years. Because of the incident in Gaza and the guys that pushed through and continued to work, got a pretty good reputation in DynCorp. So I thought I'd just stay with the company. And I ended up going to Afghanistan with DynCorp. And I was only there 3 months and we lost the contract to Blackwater. It's like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah.
Right on. And we were putting in our paperwork to switch over for Blackwater because I hadn't been in Afghanistan that long.
Yeah.
I was kind of burnt out with Israel. Same places, same routes, same, you get kind of complacent. So I thought, okay, I'll stay here in Afghanistan, except for we did a 2-week turnover with Blackwater. And actually, one of their project managers was a Team 5 guy that I knew pretty well.
Nice.
So he and I got to talk. What I didn't like, at that time, I guess I had a little bit of the contractor attitude, right? The cool guy syndrome, because Blackwater at that time, because they had gotten in some trouble, they could no longer have beards. They had to shave. And if you had tattoos, you had to wear long sleeves.
Was this after that incident in Iraq?
This is before. I believe this was before. Okay. This would have been 2006. Now,
did you have sleeves at the time?
I did. Yeah. The tats were dripping. Yeah. And my beard was, facial hair was fun, yeah. And so I kind of balked at that, talking to the guys that were riding with us. I'm like, that's fucking stupid. Like, come on, we're not in the military anymore. What's it with the rules now? But what did it for me, the final nail in the coffin, was all of our residents were like houses that DynCorp had rented out that were just outside the embassy walls, so that if shit was to go down, we could run into the embassy real quick, team up with the Marines, and then, fight the Alamo. Whereas Blackwater was going to build these like trailer parks out off Jalalabad Road on the way to the airport, which is horrible. I mean, no protection, completely bad road that gets hit all the bad guys know. It was a really stupid move. And I just thought that was it. Not only are the rules stupid about tattoos and beards, I can get past that for a good paycheck. But as far as the living arrangements, why wouldn't you just take over the houses that DynCorp has with local guard force? Marines are right next door. Right. You want to just live way off in the desert by yourself. I'm like, no, I'm not. That doesn't sound good to me.
Yeah.
No, I withdrew my paperwork, decided I was going to stay with DynCorp because I had been with them for a while, and everyone kept saying, no, we're going to get more contracts, and we got Iraq coming up, just hang out. So I was renting a condo in Thailand at the time. I was chilling. But after about 6 months, that bank account got pretty small, with no income coming in.
Yeah.
So I asked around, and Dennis Chalker and Duke Leonard, both pretty well-known plank owners of Team 6. Denny was my master chief when I went through Buds too. So I knew him, but he didn't know of me, I'm sure.
Right.
But I knew anything he was involved with would be good. And so he was involved in a project in Iraq that was a training mission, and he wanted all team guys, at least special operations guys. So I knew it was a DOD contract. So it was my first break from State Department, which was all mobile security stuff. And then Iraq, I got into the training side of things. So Afghanistan was cut short, and I was there in the wintertime. So it was more of a sightseeing tour. We did long range stuff up in the Panjshir Valley, which is one of the places the Russians got monkey stomped. It was crazy to see all the burnout tanks and stuff. And you're in a Toyota. You're like, holy shit. The only reason why I'm alive is these people want me to be. Like, it is very clear that they decimated a superpower in this valley.
And were y'all in up armored, like the Hilux trucks, or were you just in, like, okay?
Yeah, we were in Hilux and the Forerunners and all that. They were all armored up.
Okay.
No Chevy Suburbans, thank God, because they break down a lot. It was all Toyotas for the long range team. The only thing that sucked is riding that rear gun truck, man. You get all dusty and you're pretty vulnerable. You're out there flapping, but there was.
So Iraq was more of a training, like a FID.
Yep, exactly. Okay. We were there. We were creating a unit called the ERU, Emergency Response Unit. And it was our attempt at creating a true tier 1 unit in the Iraqi army, which ain't going to happen. They just don't have the same work ethic that we do. The only reason why we got them as students is they're related to somebody in the government. They're somebody's nephew, somebody's brother.
People here probably can't understand the corruption. I was going to ask, so like between Iraq and Afghanistan, what would you want people here in the U.S. to just have perspective on, as far as what some of the stuff you saw, whether it was poverty or some of the horrible things, the Taliban, or the insurgents did to the people there. What would you want people my age, regardless of age, to know about those two places?
Well, be grateful that you're not born there. Be grateful that you're a young person in America. I promise you, it's one of the first things that happened to me in Afghanistan is we were driving. We had a team pick us up at the airport, and we were driving back to our compound. And I remember seeing these women, groups of women, 3 to 5 at a time in these blue burqas. And when our vehicle would drive by, they would just quickly turn away. And I'm like, wow, it's kind of weird. I thought, okay, maybe it was just that one group. Group after group, they would just quickly turn away and not look at us. And I thought, something's going on here. So I asked the team leader, big green beret named Shrek. And I'm like, hey, Shrek, what's up with these, chicks in these burqas, like kind of twitchy? Or he goes, by Sharia law, they're not allowed to knowingly look at an infidel. And they know our vehicles, these armored vehicles are packed with, us. And that their husbands can kill them for looking at an infidel. So that's why you'll see them quickly turn away as we drive by. And I thought, holy shit, like what a concept to try to carbon copy to the way you were raised back in America. Like, could you imagine if your girlfriend or wife looked at someone that you didn't approve of, you could legally kill her? Like how weird of a system this is. It was so bizarre. We call them BGs, blue ghosts, because they look like little blue Pac-Man ghosts with their burqas. And I felt so sorry for them, like what it must be like just to be that afraid of. You can't even look at a car driving by because you know that it's an armored vehicle with infidels in it. Like I just felt so bad for him. In fact, had a Green Beret buddy. He told me a story about this. They built a water well in a village for these people, and that they came back to check up on it like a few weeks later, and it was filled with rocks. And they were like, what the fuck? It turns out that the women have to go fetch the water like 10 miles away every day or whatever it is. And it takes them all day to do it, but it's time away from the men in the village that they enjoy taking that long ass hike to get pails of water to bring them back. When they built the well in the village, the women were stuck there. Yeah, they were like, we hate our guys. They treat them like shit. Yeah. So it was very weird to see that. I don't know that much about the Iraqi culture for that because we were pretty contained in our little compound there for training purposes. Right. I didn't get outside the wire much. Except for runs to the green zone, which is Route Irish. We got hit a lot on that. But otherwise, it was just on our camp training. So I wasn't as privy to the cultural stuff. But I will say in Israel, Iraq, and Afghanistan, I just saw a lot of human suffering, a lot of human despair. I saw a lot of pain in people's eyes. I saw a lot of anger in people's eyes, a lot of sadness in people's eyes. And what I would tell people here in America of all ages is just be grateful that you're here. And in all this new age hype of how bad we are, trust me, there's a lot worse places. In the above mentioned places, there's a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. It's tough. It's tough. So be grateful that we're not stuck in places like that.
Absolutely. Did those trips to Israel, Iraq, Afghanistan, did you notice a change in yourself at all during that? Can you talk about kind of how you changed?
Big time. Israel, I became kind of born again. I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic school, understood religion, studied religion. I'm not a huge fan of organized religion, but I still use it as a tool to guide me in my beliefs. And I think if you do it right, it makes you a better person. But being young and caught up in the military and all the other stuff, I kind of drifted away from it. However, when the boys got attacked in Gaza, I really didn't know which way it was up at that time. And reconnecting with my faith really helped during that point in time. We actually took a VIP to the Church of the Nativity where they believe Jesus was born. And then down one of the little lower levels, they have a piece of his manger kind of laminated into the floor, and I was able to touch it and say a prayer, and I felt real good about that. In fact, I got a little tattoo of the Jerusalem cross on the palm of my hand.
That is cool. Yeah,
so it's a little faded over the years, but that cross is on top of the Church Nativity. So when I came out of the door, I look over my shoulder and I saw that. I thought, man, I want that as a memory, and I want it private, kind of on the inside of
How
my
bad did
hand.
that hurt?
It hurt. It was actually 3 coats too, and it really hurt.
Man.
I had to hold my thumb. And so Israel, I reconnected with my faith, which really helped. I really was able to sort through the pain of losing 3 teammates, and I was actually going through my second divorce at that time, so times were tough. Afghanistan was, like I said, it was pretty uneventful because of the wintertime. It's kind of seasonal warfare there. A lot of stuff slows down. There might be some bombings in Kabul, but it's pretty mellow. But there I was still able to see a little bit of an armed tourist, but I saw enough of this culture that I really saw there's some shit going on it's kind of ancient, kind of evil. It's a weird vibe. In fact, Shrek, the Green Beret team leader I had, he said that every step you take, you own it like it's American soil, because these people aren't scared of you. They fought the Russians for 10 years. They fought each other for 10 years. Now they're fighting us. They will fight you. They're not pussies like Iraqis are. Like, these people are warriors, and they're kind of broken up into different tribes of warlords, and they're good fighters. They're tough. They're macho. So that was, I learned from that there's just some evil shit. You had the influence of the Taliban still out there, remnants of the Mujahideen, which had turned into other networks. And so it was intimidating. It was intimidating. So I kind of saw Israel was a kind of biblical people fighting with each other.
Yeah.
Then Afghanistan was kind of the Wild West, but with the history of like Alexander the Great got his pee-pee slapped in there. I mean, it was just like shit.
Right.
The big show. Holy shit. And then Iraq was a very complicated political failure on both parts, I think. I think we failed politically over there, and I think the Iraqi government failed politically. More than once, I was Prime Minister Maliki's limo driver. Was one of my duties. When he would fly into the nearby airport, we'd pick him up. He was very curious as to what the ERU was doing. They had high hopes that the ERU would truly
save Iraq.
Be a professional unit, and they weren't, because a lot of times in the early days we were a blocking force for them. So when they would go do their hits, we would shut down roads, and kind of like Rangers do for Delta, make sure no one gets out, no one gets in. And what we would find is they would hit the target, and then they would burglarize the house next door and rob them. And we would go back to it was a Green Beret colonel that was in charge of it. And then there was an Iraqi equivalent. And we would say, look, these guys are breaking into the house next. It has nothing to do. You got to be professional. You go in, you do what you're supposed to do, whatever the mission was, and get out of there with intel or whatever it is you're doing, not go next door and rob these poor people.
Right.
Like, it was just, it was a big failure. And then we also realized, for example, when we taught them, we had snipers teaching them long gunning. As soon as we did that, sniper attacks on U.S. troops skyrocketed throughout Baghdad. So we knew what we were teaching them was getting back out to the bad guys.
Yeah.
So it was like, fuck, man. I just say, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Like, we're literally teaching the enemy. I remember active duty as a SEAL, teaching the Thai SEALs shotgun breaching, but I wasn't allowed to teach them any CQB, nothing past the door.
Right.
These are Thai dudes who are full-fledged SEALs. Their officers go through our BUDS course in Coronado, but we can't teach them anything past the door. Fast forward, as a contractor, a bunch of spec ops guys are teaching these Iraqis sniper initiated assaults, explosive breaches, full on CQB.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is that? So what I saw there was a real failure of politics. I saw the greed of the war machine. I saw when warfare becomes privatized and corporatized, like I was now a part of. I really woke up and fell out of love with it. I thought, wow, I'm a combat hooker.
Add that to your resume.
That's what we call ourselves, combat hookers. And then we realized, jokingly, our motto was training tomorrow's terrorists today. And I guarantee you several of our students were ISIS fighters later on. And capable individuals, equipment wise.
Right.
So when I kind of woke up out of that, I had an epiphany. I like, holy shit, my kids are now teenagers. When I left, my first deployment was 96. Now I'm in Iraq in 2007. 11 years down the road, I'm like, holy shit, my kids are teenagers. And I had just realized the negative aspects of what I was doing in Iraq. I no longer believed in the mission.
Yeah.
I tell you what's creepy when you're in country and you fall out of love with it and you have things pulling you back home, you get scared. Like I was never scared before. You know, you get nervous and pregame jitters before different things, but for the most part, I was in it. Like, okay, cool.
Right.
Now I was like, fuck, I want to go home. Fuck this place. Fuck this company. And my kids, holy shit. I was slowly reconnecting to them through emails and phone calls. So my last few weeks in Iraq were real trippy. I was happy to get out of there. So yeah, thank God my thoughts of my family kind of pulled me out of that haze, you know?
Yeah. And you see a lot of guys who they go through their whole careers focused on the mission, which we need those people. They get out and they don't know their kids.
Yeah.
You know, they can't go back and get those years back. For sure.
I know, you know, and now that I've kind of seen the evils of my ways in my younger days, not intentionally, but all of us are just running and gunning, you know, running through life with your hair on fire, but you don't realize. In fact, I did a podcast interview with Tom Satterley, the Delta guy. He was in Iraq, but he was also in Black Hawk Down scenario. But he said that his 14-year-old son told him, I don't give a shit about Delta Force. I'd rather have you work at Home Depot, but you're home every night. And it really hit me when he said that. Like, oh, your kids don't give a shit about what team, what number, what color, what. They just want their dad. And so many of my buddies, in fact, I have a buddy who's now contracting with the cool guys, the 3-letter people. And he's got a wife and kid here stateside, and he's in Mogadishu right now. And I'm just like, God.
It seems like if you don't have a wife and kid, it's a great thing.
Yeah, if you're young and single, man, go for it, dude.
But I know somebody who's in his 50s, contracting still
doing
single,
it. Yeah,
single, but
single. Yeah. Well, the problem with that is that you're never going to get plugged into a normal life. Like, I mean, some people don't want that. I know plenty of people that are happy being overseas and they got plenty of money and they can travel on their downtime or buy cool shit when they're home. But
it's definitely a different path that those people take. You know, it's not the traditional 9-to-5 with a family. And
I've always been a bit of a family guy, even though I'm on my 3rd marriage now, but we're coming up on 18 years. So I figured out you got to be around. That's half the battle is you got to be there.
Yeah.
And that's what killed marriage number 2. In fact, I just got reconnected with my daughter from marriage number 2 from Thailand. She's been living with us here for 4 or 5 months, and it's been amazing, you know. And I realized I have 3 kids total. When I left Iraq in 2007, I was reunited with my 2 oldest, got custody of them. They live with me in Arizona, and that was wonderful. And then my youngest daughter, TJ, I was like, damn, you know, when I was overseas, I was away from Jordan and Vienna. Now I'm home. I'm away from TJ. Like, shit, how do I fix this problem? And my oldest daughter found my youngest daughter on Instagram. We reconnected.
Wow.
We've been talking for a couple of years. And then one day she just said, Dad, I want to come live with you in America. And I was like, holy shit, let's do it.
Yeah.
So for the last 4 or 5 months,
that's awesome.
She's been here and it's just been amazing. So for my buddies that are still overseas, man, I really try to talk them into the transition stuff. I get it. I was lucky that when I left the military, contracting kicked up.
Right.
Just lucky. So it delayed the pain.
Inevitable. Yeah.
And then so when even when I left contracting, I became a Phoenix cop, which is similar enough. It's still making contractor money to recruit pay at the academy it's like quitting heroin. You know, it's $15,000 a month to $18 an hour. I saw my first pay stub and I was like, is this like for a day, or don't tell me this is for 2 weeks, man. Holy shit.
Yeah. Well, that's the last thing I definitely wanted to get on. Obviously right now, policing is a pretty hot topic. I mean, you decided to be a police officer and you ended up in Phoenix. Going through the academy, you're a Navy SEAL. You've done a little bit on the Army side. You're a contractor. You've probably been to some cool schools. Yeah. And you're next to somebody who's probably 19. Or I don't know if does your department 21? Did they require a degree or anything?
No. You had to be. You could be 20, but you had to turn 21 while you're at the academy. So basically 21.
So their last job was at IHOP.
A lot of them. Yeah.
And
other college, they did some college maybe, or they were working for their parents. Yeah.
What did you think about the training you got as a police officer?
I liked it.
Any problems?
No, I was surprised. luckily there was a group of us former military guys in my class. And so we clicked up real quick, a couple
Yeah.
Marine dudes and whatnot, some Army guys, and they made us squad leaders. And so it's a very paramilitary type environment, which made it easy to kind of plug into. And they had this dude first day, he had us lined up and like, where's my military guys at? So we'd raise our hand and he would come by and ask us what branch. He was an old Sergeant Major Marine Corps dude, real cool guy. So he kind of figured out who the military guys were, and then he made us squad leaders. So he kind of knew the formula for success.
Right.
But I quickly talked to the other squad leaders and the other military guys. I said, hey guys, listen, we're a little bit older. I was 35 at the time going through. So compared to a 21-year-old who, like you said, probably was working at Taco Bell or whatever, the mom and pop shop or whatever. I said, let's not shit on these guys. Like, this academy is their dream. It's their buds, their Marine boot camp, their recon selection, whatever it is. This is their moment. The last thing we need to do is say, well, this is gay. This is stupid. This is not tough. Like, give them their moment. Shut your mouth. But to my surprise, it was tougher than I thought. Like, the standards were actually pretty ballsy physically, academically, shooting wise. The problem I saw with Phoenix is those standards aren't maintained on an annual basis, at least as far as physical fitness and stuff.
And that seems to be a problem nationally. You have a lot of fat cops out there.
Yeah. And I think it's, they say it's because you can't discriminate against people. And I say, I don't think it's discriminating. First of all, being a cop is a blood sport. If I'm in a fight for my life in a backyard and some fatty can't hop a 6-foot fence and help me, that's a problem. There should be physical standards.
And that goes to the whole, we can't discriminate. It's offensive. And unfortunately, like in Jiu Jitsu,
killed.
Yeah. That doesn't matter. Like, none of that shit matters when you're getting choked out. And most people don't have those consequences in their day-to-day lives to even relate to that, or they've never been in a fight.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, I think there should be standards, because if you have to, and it happens depending on the city and the part of the city you work in, you could be getting into stuff every night, at least every week. We got into something. South Phoenix is very busy.
Yeah.
Now, typically in most departments, you have a certain type of cop that gravitates towards certain parts of the city. So most guys in our precinct were pretty dialed in.
Right.
Most of the people that were scared of the fat bodies would hide in the safer parts, but stuff still pops off anywhere, though. You can't really predict.
And that's the thing. That's the thing now too, is you have cops that are just getting shot in their cars doing nothing.
Yeah. It's scary.
It's scary.
People ask me all the time, what was tougher? Was it tougher being a SEAL? Was it tougher being a cop? And I say, each job that I had, the 3 main jobs I had, contractor, cop, and military, each had their own challenges, but for sure being a cop was the most difficult day-to-day job that I had. It was the only job I had where, like, everyone hates you where you work for the most part. You're constant bullseye on your back, whether you're peeing at the local gas station or you're at a red light. You're always looking around. You're always paranoid, always shit popping off. And the decisions you have to make quickly. If you're on an assault team overseas and you see a threat, you neutralize that threat, and there's usually no dramas about it. As a cop, if you shoot someone, holy shit. And I did get involved in an officer-involved shooting, and my world got real small, real quick. You're on the news. You're in front of homicide. You're in front of internal affairs. You're in front of a incident review board with civilians on it. Like, you're like, holy shit.
I think you got into some undercover work, correct? Mm-hmm. So can you kind of talk about the timeline there and what happened?
Yeah. So take a stressful job and really make it stressful. At least for me. Some people might like undercover. I'm a pretty genuine dude. And what I didn't like about undercover is I have to pretend to be your friend and shoot the shit with you. And you might be having dinner with someone and their family, but like, it's a weird way of looking at it, but you're kind of fucking this guy over. You know what I mean? Now, he's the bad guy. He's the one committing, whatever crimes. So you have to remind yourself of the professional reason why you're there. But the deception part of it, like, I would rather just strap up some gear and come through your front door and fight you, as opposed to this undercover stuff is real creepy, man.
How did you kind of build rapport with those guys and get them to trust you?
Yeah, so a lot of it came from the guy that kind of brought me to the community. His nickname, I call him Gas Pedal Bobby. He's very unassuming, but very intelligent dude. Like, he looks like a dirtbag. He really dirtied up well, but his ability to just talk to people, and little things he would teach me. He would say, "Do you smoke?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Buy a pack of smokes and have a lighter on you at all times. Because if somebody gets too fucking questiony, break out a cigarette, they'll ask for one. It'll shut them the fuck up." Like little things like that to kind of keep people at bay or to keep conversations in a certain direction. He was very fucking good at.
Yeah.
Just little things I would ask him, like, "Well, what if they want you to do drugs?" Or just these little keys that
Yeah.
he could do and in conversations and change the topic of it or
Right.
whatever. He was very smooth with the way he could talk and think on his feet, where I wasn't. Like I'm a pretty mellow dude. My tattoo saved me because I got, even as a cop, I had tats on my hands and stuff. I didn't have the neck tat yet, but no one ever asked me if I was a cop. I was always waiting for that question because you always see that in the movies or whatever. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So
did it ever get hairy as far as the questioning goes, or the lack of
no,
trust?
no, never. I was always with Gas Pedal Bobby, and he was a good talker, so I was kind of just quiet.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say too much, and he was so good at what he did that there wasn't kind of what my job was. If we were in someone's places, I was to ask to go use the bathroom, which is pretty normal at some point, not right away, but when there was kind of the right moment. And that was my chance to recon the apartment, the house, to make sure, is there a dude in the next room with a weapon or whatever,
Right.
you know, whatever
Right.
the deal was. So that was kind of my job. I was really his security, which I was comfortable with. And that's not that uncommon in the drug trade. There's usually the main dude, the money man or whoever. And then there's a guy or two that's just kind of there to make sure shit's cool. So there wasn't a lot expected of me, thank God.
Yeah.
But I am a laid back enough dude that if some conversation came my way, I could kind of throw it back. And he was very good. I said, well, what if some people ask me about my tattoos? They're obviously
Military.
if they know they're military oriented. And what if this guy is a former Army guy? And he goes, well, why don't you just say you got kicked out of the Navy for drugs and that you just been hard finding work? You just kind of started hanging out with me. I'm an old friend. And so he kind of gave me some dialogue I could kind of chew on so that if it ever came up, like, hey, I like your tat. What is that? Is that a Navy tat? Or, you know, it wasn't like a deer in the headlights moment. So he was very good about little things to kind of put in my head. But I spent a lot of time thinking about shit, especially if there was, you know, some things that were going on the next day. I would be very nervous at night, couldn't sleep. It takes a special kind of person to even just sitting there in unmarked cars, like looking at locations. You're always worried about people walking up on you. And it's a very creepy world that I never felt like I fit into very well.
And I feel like people have, I mean, you really can't relate to that unless you've been in that situation where one wrong, you know, if you slip up on your words once, the consequences are not good.
Yeah.
You know,
big time. That's what I was always worried about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you have to learn the drug lingo and all that?
I did. That's another thing too, is I grew up pretty innocent, just a small town in Colorado, single mom, like we talked about. So I was never exposed, didn't have a parent that did drugs or a sibling that did drugs or, you know, I always hung out with athletic people. So even booze wasn't a problem in high school or college.
Yeah.
Just focused on other stuff. Luckily, so I was never around it. And then of course, in my young adult life, I was always running a gun with the military. So again, just was never around even weed or anything. So it was so weird for me. Like, well, what do they call it? Or what's the, you know, I don't want to be like, excuse me, Holmes, may I have a puff of that marijuana cigarette? You know, and they're like, who the fuck is this guy? He's definitely a cop. Who does marijuana cigarette? So yeah, I had to learn what shit's called. And a lot of that too was just listening to what people say. You know, a lot of questions were asked at first riding around with Bobby. And then as the, you know, time went on, I was able to just kind of hear what people call it. And so, but it was so foreign to me. That's another reason why I'm like, I didn't grow up a stoner kid or whatever. I just was so not comfortable in that environment. And so I eventually I wanted to go tactical. And so the one thing that my undercover journey brought me to was Phoenix at that time had a few guys on the desert interdiction team where they were intercepting backpackers in the desert before they got to their load vehicles on mile markers on the highway. So they would backpack the drugs in, rendezvous with a vehicle at mile marker, whatever, 42 on I-8, and then they would load it and go. So we would snatch those dudes up in the desert prior to that.
That's cool.
There was a good system in place. it was pretty paramilitary. I mean, it was
Right.
full on camouflage, night vision rifles. And so I was like, this is the shit. If I could have
Then I
stayed
wanted
there,
to,
but
yeah.
it was temporary assignment. So I was like, damn.
How much experience undercover did you have before that officer involved shooting that you were involved in?
That was my third day and I was on a temporary assignment.
Can you talk about that? Because that's
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah. And that was kind of a funny thing that followed me around the department. Anytime I would do a temporary assignment, like with the SWAT team, they'd be like, bro, you're on a temp, don't shoot nobody. Because it was just, it's kind of unusual that when you're on temporary assignment that you would get involved in, but that shows you the dangers of how close you get to the demon being undercover. When you're in uniform, bad guys react very differently to you. When you're pretending to be one of them, you're a part of their world. You get really close to them, danger close. You don't have your vest on, you don't have radios. You know, there are certain things in place to help, but for a good several moments, you're on your own. You know, the backup is a ways out. So I got approached by Bobby in the locker room because of my tattoos, and everyone knew my military background at the precinct. And he said, hey, would you ever think of doing some undercover stuff? And I was like, nah, I don't know. I want to be a SWAT guy. You know, I got to do my time on patrol. I'm having fun learning shit on patrol. And I think I just want to go tactical at some point. And he goes, well, you got to do 3 years before you can even test. Maybe this is something you could try and get into. And, you know, you'll be able to do search warrants. We do level 2 search warrants. If we're hitting someone that's known to be dangerous, we'll get with the SWAT team. They'll help us do the level 1. They'll make initial entry, and then we go in with them. So you get to kind of work with them. And so he kind of sold me on that. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. It's kind of a tactical narcotic squad. Like if you work some people and you get to a dope house, you can actually do the search warrant yourself. And if it is a big boy, like I said, you will get supplemented with special assignments unit. So it is kind of a relationship. I thought, oh, okay, all right. Well, okay, it's better than taking shoplifting reports and traffic accidents. So he arranged it with my boss. And in the first couple of nights riding with Bobby was super chill. Just kind of showing me around, showing me how it goes. You know, we talked to a few hookers, driving around, just being dirtbags. And it's kind of fun. Like, oh, shit, you really just make up your own schedule. It's really not the normal squad hours because bad guys are doing all kinds of shit, so he would just talk to people at the homeless shelter. We drive over here, bust into an apartment, hang out with some dude, figure out what's going on. So it was weird for me because now I have these like bad guys in the backseat of the car with me and we're riding around looking for dope. And it was just like, fuck, it's so weird. Yeah. It was trippy. So one night we decided he wanted to get me doing some hand-to-hands. So we drove this, we call it like a Scooby-Doo van. So it was a van with a curtain behind where we sat. And so we would just drive around the city in that. And he wanted to get me experience doing hand-to-hands through the windows just to kind of get used to it. So we were going in this tough neighborhood that I had worked in patrol. It's called West Side City. It's a Crip neighborhood, very heavy with crack. And there's one particular corner where there's always dudes hanging out selling, and it's a bad place. So he wanted to go into West Side City for my first hand-to-hand. And so we came up with this plan to have 4 tactical dudes behind the curtain in the back of the van, and that I was going to do the hand-to-hand. And the hand-to-hand was very eventful. As soon as I took possession of the crack, this young dude decided to try to jack me and Bobby. He pointed a gun at us, like in our face. And luckily I had pre-staged my Glock under my right thigh. So I was able to clear my weapon and neutralize the threat. And then it was very bizarre because everything just was in slow motion, but the real time was so rapid. It was just a very bizarre experience. Yeah. I really just remember seeing the barrel of his weapon less than a foot from my face. And just—
Did he get any shots off?
No. And it was only because I had my Glock and I asked Bobby as we were driving in, I said, hey, would it make you nervous if I pre-staged my Glock under my thigh? Because if something happens at this door— Afghanistan, we started zip tying our Serpa holsters up on our chest rigs for our Glocks, because a lot of people would come up to your window and you're trying to fight this drop holster. Right. It's trapped under the seat. And so we ended up, we got into kind of fighting from a vehicle, became a part of our tactics over in Afghanistan. And so having some of those lessons learned, I had asked them, I don't want to make anyone nervous, but by the time I fight inside my waistband on my left, 8 o'clock position on my body, I'm going to be a dead duck. If I can just tuck it under my right leg, it's right there. And I had my left hand kind of hanging down by my junk. So it just looked like I was hanging out as I was slouched in the car seat. So it didn't look suspicious, but my hand was touching the pistol grip of my handgun. So luckily when dude decided to jack us, like it was just a lightning quick reaction. And in fact, when it was over, Bobby said, man, you responded so fast that I thought that guy was shooting the dumping rounds into your chest. And the 4 tactical guys thought the same thing, like, holy fuck, Clark just got smoked. So he had hit the gas pedal, thus the nickname Gas Pedal Bobby, launched the van, I don't know, 50, 70, 100 feet down the street, realized I'm not bleeding. I'm okay. I'm trying to get out of the fucking van. He stops. We see another dude run by and duck into this alleyway. So me and one of the tactical guys run out and hold on the alleyway. SWAT shows up. Scene is locked down. They eventually find the dude that ran. They found him. They found his dad's gun in a drawer and a plastic gun in the alleyway. The gun that I remember seeing is his dad's gun they found in his dad's drawer, like a silver revolver. But he never admitted to that part of the story. So anyway, the lady was arrested. That guy was arrested. They transported my dude to the hospital. He ended up surviving. Severed his spine. He's in a wheelchair for a while. Oddly enough, I saw him a few times when I was back on patrol. It was creepy.
That is creepy. Give him a little nod.
Well, I wave at him and he would wave back. Sorry, my daughter's like peeking in the window. No, you're okay. It was kind of weird. Like I ride by, he would wave and I'd be like,
yeah, hey man,
hey, bro, fuck. It was kind of but anyway, it was funny because it was my 3rd day temporary assignment.
Yeah.
When I had to do my walkthrough with homicide, the detective, it like blew him out of his chair. He was just like, holy shit.
Well, and someone with your experience, a cop without your experience probably wouldn't have pre-staged his Glock. Probably.
Yeah. It
could have gone, way differently. So what would you like to see with policing today? I mean, obviously, I'm trying to think where I heard this, but you have departments that are paying $60,000 for nods and they're buying APCs, but they're not approving like a couple $1,000 shooting course for their officers to take.
Yeah. So we're training for sure. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's on the good side of the argument. It's been a national narrative that cops need more training, and I agree. Yeah. For example, with Phoenix, when I was there, you were only required to do an annual qualification with your handgun. Once a year. These fuckers are shooting. And the problem with a lot of cops is they think that they're gunslingers because they carry a gun every day to work. I carry a laptop every day to work. I don't think I'm fucking Bill Gates. Like my laptop, I send my payroll in once a week. That's maybe I answer some emails. Like I'm not, but so a lot of these guys carry the gun every day and they think that they're these gunfighting dudes. And they're not. So a lot of cops suck, like patrol cops. I mean, obviously most SWAT guys are dialed in with tactics and stuff nowadays. Most patrol guys suck with a handgun. And I hate to say it, the ones that don't suck seek out training on their own. They go to Pat McNamara's course when he's in town, or they go to,
they train Jiu Jitsu. I mean,
I know BJJ should be huge for law enforcement.
Mandatory. It should be mandatory.
And that's the thing is they need to set aside training time. So, for example, I always had the argument with physical fitness. Why isn't there? We have a 10-hour shift. The first hour of that shift should be some organized fucking PT like we did in the police academy.
Yeah,
we're out in the back parking lot doing jumping jacks, push-ups, running around, doing laps. That's how we should start every fucking patrol shift, because the other shift is still on the street for another 3 hours after we hit the streets. They can hold the street for an hour. Yeah. So same thing with BJJ. There's no reason why they can go down. Every squad rotates through the academy, or they have a mat room built in the precinct.
Right.
That would save so many use of force escalations. It would stop.
And I know a guy, not to throw him under the bus here, but he just got hired on with Dallas. And I was like, hey man, like, come train with the gym, come train some jiu-jitsu. And his response was, well, I got enough of that in the academy.
Oh, no, you didn't.
And I'm like, horrible. Dude, if we rolled right now,
you could wrap him up. Yeah.
Don't think I'm a average at best blue belt.
Yeah. And you'd still mop the floor with them, because if someone doesn't know what they're doing, it's
you don't know. And I wish people would understand, because I mean, most of the anti-cop, I mean, almost everyone that I went to high school with or college with that I see on their social media. It's just this anti-cop post, anti-police post, and it's sad because they don't understand the safety net they provide. I mean, if there was no police,
Yeah. Well, it's become popular to bash cops.
popular.
And another thing too, the media obviously has a huge role to play in this. And the reason why is the only time you hear about law enforcement on the news, excuse me, is if it's negative.
Yep.
So I always equate it to people. It would be kind of like if we took a really tough history exam, right? And the teacher says, "Hey, I got our test results back. Mr. Impastato, I have a question for you. You missed number 17, and I don't know if you understood the material or what, but let's go through that. Since you had a hard time, maybe the rest of the class had a hard time with it." And you're like, fuck, okay. So you go through it. He discusses number 17, and then he goes, also on number 42, you just seem to miss the mark.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were not paying attention that day. So now you start thinking, did I fuck this test up? Everyone in the class thinks I'm an idiot. Yeah. Then he goes to number 72 saying, you also missed this one, Mr. Impastato. So apparently, for everyone's benefit, I might as well go over it because it didn't get through your thick skull. And you're like, dude, did I fail this test? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Then as you're leaving class, he's handing out tests as you walk out of the classroom. You get your test and you got a 97%. Yeah. But all he focused on was the 3 questions that you missed. That everyone in the class thinks you're an idiot. Well, that's what the news media does to law enforcement. When do you ever see a positive story?
Exactly.
And millions of interactions a year that are positive.
Exactly.
And none of them ever make the news.
No one, I mean, most people, they don't understand the kind of shit you have to see as a police officer or as a first responder. And then, you get pulled over for going 15 over. They might not have a whole lot of patience for you.
Well, you don't know what that cop maybe he just came from a funeral where he lost his partner, or a fatal car wreck where he saw an infant ejected from a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's another thing too, is a lot of people say, well, there's bad apples. They shouldn't be hiring these people. The hire process is very thorough. It's very
almost
rare.
You could argue it's too rigorous because you lose a lot of good guys.
A lot of good people.
Smoke some weed. You're like, oh, can't do it for 3 years.
Or people that just get nervous and fail the polygraph, and they actually never smoked weed. They're like a good Mormon kid.
Yeah,
they just get nervous.
Yeah.
So, but what it is, I think, is PTSD is very real in law enforcement, and it's not addressed. Whereas in the military, at least it's a conversation. It's a topic. And there's avenues for veterans. I've been through PTSD treatment at the VA. Was lucky to get a really cool counselor who was an Army gal. So she spoke the language.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of good results chatting with her. But cops, it's not an option. You're so busy working. You don't want to be seen as weak.
You live in the community that you're serving in.
Well, there's also no separation from like you and your family. So when I was in Iraq running a gun, and by the time I got back to my family, you're talking a few days later after deployment. Maybe I stop in Thailand for a while, come back. When you have a tough shift, I'm 30 minutes from home. So like the blood is still dripping from your hands, regardless of what scenario you just might have seen. And I don't care your previous background or how long you've been a cop. Almost every shift you see something new for the first time. Like the public is that weird. You'll see some shit. You're like, oh my God. And then 30 minutes after shift, you're home and your wife is bitching about the credit cards, or your kid won't go to bed. And so it's a very demanding job. And I wish departments would do better with mental health services and annual psychological evaluations, because a lot of these people work in tough areas for their whole 20-year career. Why can't we rotate them out and make them say, hey, this is a tough precinct. After X amount of years, you are going somewhere else for 2 years before you can rotate back. Or there's got to be a way that, why does a small amount of your workforce take the brunt of it, and the rest of them are riding they're up in the nice little waving at kids eating ice cream for
suburbs,
their 20 years.
Right?
Or they're at a training command, like our firearms guys. There was one guy that had been there for 14 years as a firearms trainer. What good is that, dude?
Yeah.
Send him out in the streets, And
I think another problem too is that every time there's one of these police shootings, the first thing everybody does is go to their laptop.
Oh yeah.
And they get on social media and they post this freaking virtue signal post about how awful the police are.
Yeah.
And that there has to be change before the details are even out. Like this last one with the taser. I mean,
oh yeah.
If people would just take a minute, let
Mhm.
everything get settled. 9 times out of 10, you find out these shootings
Yeah.
were justified.
It's not what you think. Yeah, there's almost everything I've seen over the last few years that has popped up. I haven't followed every single, almost every one. I'm like, I would have shot. There was one dude, I think it was Chicago. He was walking with a knife kind of in the center median lane, like where the little stripes are at. And this cop shot him, and everyone's like, oh my God, that guy was like so far away. Why did the cop shoot him? Well, the dude had a knife clearly in his hand. And if you notice right before the cop shot, the dude dips his shoulder, turning towards the cop to run at him. And what they don't realize, and I didn't realize until the academy, the 21-foot rule,
Yep.
where they have a rubber gun in your holster and they have a dude with a rubber knife, and they have you start from the interview position like you're writing notes on your card, and they say threat. By the time this dude runs at you with your rubber knife and you get your gun, he hits you every time.
Yeah.
That's 21 feet away. They close on you in about a second before you can even get your gun out. And so it was like that scenario. Everyone was like, yeah, he had a knife, but he was like 50 feet away. No, he wasn't. I think it ended up being like 14 feet away. And
Yeah.
then when you've been in those training scenarios, you realize that dude was going to be on that cop, and that cop realized that. That's why he shot him. And so even this latest one with the taser lady, to me, it's very clear she thought she was going to tase the guy. It's 100%
Absolutely.
her mistake.
It's tragic.
There's no ill will on her part. I'm sure she's devastated by it. She clearly says, I'm going to tase him, taser, taser, taser. And even in the academy, they told us this is a problem, that you have to be sure of what's in your hand. Never have both in your hands at the same time. And you always keep your taser on the offhand. Don't keep it anywhere near your gun. Your gun's on your strong side, your taser, and it's flipped backwards too, so it's awkward to grab. So it's a very intentional grab for us. And never have both in your hands. And to be very clear, there's not a sympathetic reflex, because a taser does sound like a pop from a gun when the cartridge fires. And so that could cause someone who's lethal to. So that's why you say taser, 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 because it does sound like a gunshot. And typically what happens is that sympathetic response, and then the firing squad scenario happens. But this poor lady, I believe, really thought she was trying to help out. She was going to tase this dude. She ends up shooting him, and now she's facing charges. That's so insane to me.
It's tragic in all fronts. I mean, and that's the thing too, is the other thing is when people fall into vehicles and there's a glove box there or a center console.
Oh, for sure.
9 times out of 10. And that's what it's real easy to judge when it's not your life. It's at risk in that situation.
Well, most of those people have never been in a life and death scenario, and let again a profession where you're repeatedly in those scenarios.
Is there a way to reduce some of these shootings that are, well, I mean, they're tragic, they shouldn't have happened? Is there a way to do that, or is it just part of the job, unfortunately?
Well, I think there's a belief in America that we can get rid of gun violence. That's never going to happen, because humans are humans. We've killed each other since caveman times. It's always going to happen. There might be some ways to try to mitigate it as best as possible. But for one, we have to realize, as a society, as intelligent people, there's going to be fucked up shit that happens, whether it's intentional, accidental. There is a percentage of law enforcement specifically. It's a blood sport. You know, there's going to be some things that happen. You can try to mitigate mistakes. You can try to correct certain behaviors. I think there's been a big push over the last several years of community policing and being aware. I saw it going through the academy. We had community action officers. We were forced to speak to different communities. The community I served was the Black community of South Phoenix. We were very active talking to church groups and community meetings. I think all that's good. But there's also certain areas of town are just tougher than others. We need to, as a society, how are we going to fix that? Instead of blaming the cops, why are certain parts of the town the tough part of town? I don't know that. We have to figure out how to kind of dial that in as a society instead of just pointing the finger at cops too.
It's amazing too how everyone wants to hold an individual police, or the entire police community accountable
for the actions of a few.
For the actions of a few, but they don't want to hold their politicians accountable for the disaster of a city that they live in. I mean, you have some of these cities that are just run horribly.
Yeah.
And you're blaming all your problems on the wrong people. I mean, why don't you get some other people in office, try something else? Clearly shit's not working out, you know, with the current strategy.
I agree 100%. I just think it's tough. I think the only thing I would make more training mandatory and available. to law enforcement. I would also have annual mental health checkups, because there's good cops that just get burnt out. I know I was burnt out. I know I was not at my best many times because of the shit you constantly see, the family problems you have at home, financial problems, all the problems. Nobody calls the cops because they're happy and, hey, I just won the lottery. Wanted you to show up and have fun with us. You see, one of the worst scenes I was on was a father stabbed his 2 kids. And there was just blood everywhere, like a Saw movie. You like, how can a dad do this to his own sons? And it ended up being because they didn't want to pick weeds in the backyard. So you just see how trivial and how violent things are. Then you start bickering with your own squad mates. Oh, this guy's lazy. Oh, this chick's a hoe. Or there's the whole drama of any group of people.
Yeah.
So your 10 little clowns you roll around with, you start getting little cliques and little things. And it's very complicated,
You get, jaded, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
There was a pretty, it made national media, but in Allen, which is like right next door to Plano where I live, these 2 kids killed their family and then killed themselves because they were depressed.
I bet. Yeah.
And it's like, imagine being the police to have to go in on that. And then again, pull you over for something's trivial, and you're going to be an asshole, this cop who you have no idea what he just came from.
Exactly. That happens a lot. I never thought of it until we expect these cops. There is no other profession that is under the microscope like law enforcement is. Why don't we demand body cameras for our politicians? What about all the malpractice that causes, deaths in the medical profession? Like why is there such a spotlight being put on law enforcement? Well, it's because it's demonized in the media, of course. But why aren't there other aspects of our society that we expect that much? Like, we really hold almost law enforcement to a level of expectation it's impossible to reach. Like, everything they do, they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. And they know that. They know that they're unappreciated by a lot of people.
And now they have the back of their head, hey, I could do the right thing. Like, I don't forgot what department it was, but people are getting fired for justified shootings.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And it's like, I can do everything right and still be unemployed and still be, made, put on the public media for everyone to see the worst 5 minutes of my life.
I had a buddy in Phoenix who did 7 years hard time for a shooting. That was, in our opinion, a justified shooting, but it became political and it made the news. And the department's reaction was fucking throw the book at him.
No loyalty.
No.
In politics.
If you embarrass, and all these departments are very political, and even the military is at the lower level, the sled dog level, everything's very legit. It's the cause that you believe in. But the higher ups in both the military and in law enforcement, they're politicians.
Yeah.
It's just very scary. If you embarrass the department, they will hang you to dry for sure. And it's scary. I feel bad for cops, man. That's why I love like what Mitch is doing. He's raising money for free BJJ lessons.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely support that. Just real fast on gun control. What are your thoughts on some of that stuff right now that's going down with Joe Biden? And
I think it's nuts. I've tried to explain to some of my liberal friends, the way I see gun ownership in America is 3 groups. You have the government, criminals, and then law-abiding gun owners. And all of these laws they pass only affect one of the groups. Obviously, the government's going to have whatever weapons they want. Criminals are going to have whatever weapons they want. So why are we as law-abiding gun owners the only ones penalized?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. So it's just,
the logic doesn't make sense to me. And, if someone's willing to go shoot an innocent person in the face,
they
don't care about putting a tax stamp in for their AR pistol, they're like,
yep.
And so I don't know. And again, I'm hoping more people my age will, because I think it is a quiet majority can say this is kind of crazy. Some of the stuff that's coming down legislatively.
It is.
Is that a word?
It is. I think it is. I'll go with it.
We'll make it one. But yeah, I hope that, people will listen to people like you with all this experience. You've done a lot of cool shit in a lot of different communities. And I hope that they'll listen and hopefully we can start getting back on track. Do you see this divide going away anytime soon in the country?
No, I think it'll get worse before it gets better, but I still believe in the American spirit. There is a weird thing about Americans that when the shit hits the fan, we pull together and we pull it out of our ass. I don't know how. It just seems to be the American way.
Yeah.
Maybe it started in the revolution. We fucked up the only world superpower.
Yeah.
We just for some reason, we just do that. We really come together. That camaraderie we had for a little bit after 9/11, even the feeling that we had for a few weeks when the virus hit, there was a moment where we all there was this little bond that I felt. And then of course it got political and weird and it kind of went to shit. But I think with this divide, I think people are realizing that the media is not our friends. It's not the news I grew up with. Politicians aren't our friends. They're obviously in it. One of the best interviews I heard, I would encourage everyone to listen to, is the interview with Joe Rogan and Tulsi Gabbard, the most recent one. She really goes into, it was Jocko. She was on Jocko for 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
But it was amazing because she went into such detail about what the real problem is in DC. It's what we think, but she clarifies it and in great detail.
And talk about somebody that got railroaded by their own party.
I know. And she's a rock star, but that's why they hated her, because she knows that she checked a lot of boxes for them. She's a female of color. I would. Oh, yeah. I'm like, why aren't there more Democrats like her? She's awesome. I would vote for her.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm an independent. I want the best. Exactly. Like we were talking about before, I want the best person gets a job. Right. I don't care about the rest of it, whatever else, other factors people consider. So that's why even as a kid, I wanted to be an independent so that you give me two options and I'm going to pick. I want to keep it simple because the rest of it's very complicated, but you give me two people, I'm going to do my own little research and figure out. I would vote for her depending on who her opponent was, but she's at the top of my list if she was to run and make it. Like, I was so surprised when there were 50 knuckleheads on stage. She didn't end up being one of them when she was running for president this last time, but it's because she's an honest, down-to-earth person.
Yeah. How do you get these two options? Like, how are we, out of all the people in the U.S., we're stuck with these
so
two
stupid
people.
Yeah.
Well, man, we've been going for like almost 2.5 hours. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's an honor to have you. You're the second guest. So it's Greg Hakey.
Oh, sweet.
You, and I can't thank you enough for taking time. Is there anything that you want to plug? I know you have a podcast that people should go listen to. What's it called?
Yeah, sure. Good Vibes Podcast with Clark Impastato and Ryan G. You can definitely check us out. We're on all the normal platforms, and I think Ryan posts up our Zoom videos on YouTube. So check us out. And yeah, they deplatform my old Instagram social media page, so I won't even bother plugging that. But
yeah, where can people find you if they want to try to find you on Instagram? What's your
it's handle? Just Clark_Impastato.
Okay. I'll put it on the show notes too for people to find it. Yeah.
Okay.
The banning of conservative ideas is another thing we could talk about too.
It's a shame, especially when it happened. And I've never cared how many followers I had, but what bothered me was I had that account for 6-7 years, and there are videos and pictures. It was like a free cloud for me. I no longer have those pictures and videos because I just don't back them up on my computer anymore. You go through so many phones and pictures. So I always use that, like my Throwback Thursdays. I could just scroll back years and be like, oh shit, look at this video, gone. So I was like, damn you, Instagram. Like, it's 6 years of memories of just brutal, just for
it's horrible
having a different viewpoint than they do. Nothing I do is, aggressive or intimidating. It's just
the leader of Iran can have it Twitter and say whatever he wants, and it's fine.
Yeah, for sure. It's so nuts, man. But that's why in a way, it's a blessing in disguise because it's made not as many DMs coming in, and the people I want to follow, I follow, and vice versa. So it's made it. I got a smaller circle now, which is easier to manage.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, thank you so much. We'll have you back on again. I'm gonna go ahead and hit stop. All right, guys, that is all for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to follow Clark on Instagram, which I encourage you to do so, it's Clark_Impastato. I can't thank him enough for coming on. He was a really cool guest to have. And just what a crazy life experience that he's had. He's done it all. And like I said, I can't thank him enough for taking the time to come on and talk to us. If you want to help me out, please follow the podcast on social media. On Facebook, it's The ReFounded Project. On Instagram, it's at The ReFounded Project. And on Twitter, it's at ReFoundedProj. That's PROJ. That helps me out. I am trying to get better at this every day. I'm my own worst critic, and I have a list of things that I want to improve on. But thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it, and I will try to have another episode for you guys soon. Thank you, guys.